press the Let's Go Live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the interwebs. Before we go ahead and get started, we can't have the tubes disconnect themselves, or rather not connect themselves, because we got a show to do here, man. And it looks like things are connected on the YouTubes. Let's check over here on the Rumbles. It looks like our Locals is alive and well. And it's good that things are working because we got a special guest today. Our friend Garrett Ziegler is joining us in just a minute. But it is connected. That's tremendous. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about Hunter Biden. We've got some serious deposition transcripts that we need to attend to, and we're going to be having the assistance of our friend Garrett Ziegler over from Marco Polo USA, and he is the author of the report on the Biden laptop, which we're going to be talking about. But we've got two depositions that we want to take a look at because these just got released by the House Oversight Committee. One involving Hunter's gallerist, alleged gallerist. I guess he was the actual gallerist, but he was selling Hunter's artwork. And this is Georges Bergès. And so we're going to go through the transcript because he came in and sat down in front of the House Oversight Committee and got asked a bunch of questions. And really what we're learning from this, and we're going to wait for Garrett to, fill us in, but is that Georges Bergès, really, there wasn't a great deal of separation between old Hunter and his art sales. In other words, he knew who was buying his paintings and who was paying exorbitant fees for those paintings. It was a very expensive transaction for some of those people. But what was interesting is somebody who bought a lot of the artwork is Hunter's lawyer, Kevin Morris. Now, this guy's strange. It's Hunter's lawyer. We've got questions about that. We don't know if he actually is doing really much legal work for Hunter, but he's also been his financier. He's also been somebody who basically gifted him, loaned him money to pay off his taxes, put him up in nice residences in, I think, Malibu, California on the beach. We're going to learn a lot more about this. I think he's also suing our friend Garrett and some other people. We've got questions about whether he's making a documentary for Hunter Biden. And so we're going to learn a lot more about him because he also was deposed by the House Oversight Committee. And in that deposition, Kevin Morris invoked attorney-client privilege. He kept saying over and over, attorney-client privilege is going to protect me from having to answer questions because he was representing Hunter. And so I found this photo of Hunter, man, and look at that nose hair really hanging out there. I mean, that's a really, interesting photo. I mean, it's a real thick one there. So Hunter is now scheduled for a deposition. He snubbed Congress, but then reversed his snub. And so we're going to get into all of it today on the show. You can see I've got two different full depositions that are pulled up here. And so we're going to read through it. We're going to hit the highlights. This first one's 138 pages from Georges Bergès. And this next one is a little bit longer, the one with Kevin Morris. And so we're going to get through it all and talk about it with our friend Garrett Ziegler. But I want to give a quick update on what's happening with Trump because we've been following this Trump saga for quite some time. And we were very excited today. Today is the New Hampshire day, obviously. We've got Donald Trump, who is hopefully going to seal the deal in New Hampshire, running really against Nikki Haley. She's the only one left. And so if you're still out there in New Hampshire, getting close to the voting booth, stay in line. Make sure you get out there and get your vote in. But we've been wondering what's going to be happening with Donald Trump because, of course, he's in the middle of this E. Jean Carroll trial. And we know that on Tuesday, well, that's today, on Friday, I think it was, Thursday, one of the days, one of the jurors got sick. I'm losing track of days here. It's all a blur. There's so many things going on. But in the E. Jean Carroll case, remember, Alina Abba was a little feverish. We also had one of the jurors that may or may not have had COVID. And so we had a jury trial back on Monday. That's right. This was just yesterday. We talked about this. And then on that same day, they didn't actually do anything. Remember, Donald Trump showed up in court. He was like, I'm ready to testify on Monday. He said, let's get this over with because I got to go back to New Hampshire on Tuesday, today, and then show up to win my primary there. And the question was, of course, whether Donald Trump was going to have to be back in court today. The judge, Kaplan, said no. So late yesterday, on the Monday, he entered a minute entry. Judge Kaplan said, okay, we did have a jury trial that was held on Monday, but it really wasn't held. The trial was ended early, and the trial was postponed to tomorrow, the 24th, which is going to be a Wednesday. So in other words, the judge said, okay, Tuesday, no trial, that's today. And we were kind of expecting that because Trump's in New Hampshire. We've also got, Lena Abba might be sick and this juror might be sick. So they continued it to Wednesday, which is tomorrow, which is what we were expecting. And Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, cannot be happy about that at all. But that all got postponed. But then today, my friends, look, it got postponed again. And so we're not even going to have trial tomorrow on Wednesday. We're actually going to be off tomorrow as well. I mean, not here, but in court. We'll be here doing the show, obviously. But then tomorrow, on Thursday, that's the next date that the trial got continued to. And this is the only thing that we've seen here. Trial is continued to Thursday, 1:25, 9:30 a.m. Trial will not be held tomorrow on Wednesday. This is from the deputy clerk, Andrew, who submitted that in. So a little bit of a hiatus on the E. Jean Carroll case. Of course, we're going to get back here and cover it when it is back and in session. So a little bit quiet out there on the Trump trial front. Also, I checked the dockets on the Florida case, and things are relatively quiet there. We have a little bit of back and forth, and maybe we'll get into tomorrow if things are still quiet. The D.C. case is still basically on hold. Jack Smith got the old backhand and said, stop filing your unconstitutional motions, your illegal motions, because the case is stayed and held in abeyance, and so that one's on hold. We've got the Fannie Wade scandal, which is popping off there. And so we've got a little bit of a hold there. We just had a hearing yesterday. And so things are a little bit quiet, which is good because it's the New Hampshire season and we have the primary to attend to. And so we're going to be keeping our eyes on that. But not until we attend to some other serious business from our very good friend Garrett, who is joining us and who is going to be helping us debrief and go through these very important depositions, because we covered a lot of the Trump stuff here, but the other side is also very involved in some nefariousness, and we need to unpack that here. And so we're going to bring in Garrett if Garrett is ready. It looks like he is. And so welcome aboard, Garrett. Good to see you, my friend. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Wait, I can't hear you for some reason. Am I plugged in here? That might be on me.
How about
Are you
now?
there?
Yeah. How about now?
Or is that your audio?
I can hear you. Can you not hear me?
Hang on a sec. Are you there?
How about now?
Gotcha. Okay, so that was my bad. Sorry about that.
All
I got
good.
you loud and...
Hey, that's like the first time it hasn't been my bad. So
No, it's always my bad.
I'm usually the one messing up, but we have enough time. I have all the time in the world, as you mentioned. My value add here is because I have some personal experience, especially with one of the people giving testimony, and that would be the bankroller. But I have both transcripts up here in front of me on my iPad, and I will only interject if I have a personal experience with this, or I can speak to something, the the Morris figure is suing me personally, and that's still making its way through the California Court of Appeals. Before we start on Berges or Morris, I want to say that Morris lied multiple times. We can go through that, but just one that I have to clear up before we do anything else. Morris said that all of our motions against him were unsuccessful. That is a total lie. One of our anti-slaps was granted, so Morris actually owes us legal fees, and in fact, he's appealing that decision. So by the very essence of him appealing it, that means he lost and he wants to get a new set of eyes on it. So that was what I took offense to the most, because he can call me any name he wants, but if he's lying about court documents that are available to the public. So I just wanted to say that before we get going. And I have a coffee, so I'm not being rude if I drink my coffee.
No, not at all. And let's actually zoom in on that just a little bit. So to give people some context, I know you've been on the show, you've been on this channel multiple times, and we're super appreciative of your work. So I think most people know who you are, but can you give us a quick update on that litigation? So for people who are not aware, okay, you are the author of this amazing report, and you can get a copy of this, marcopolousa.org. You got your copy, I've got my copy. ton of people in our community have their copies. They post pictures,
Yes.
and they're it's great. And for those who don't know, this is a report on the Hunter Biden laptop, like the actual hard drive. You flip through it, and it's just filled with the details, a total dossier on everything that's in there. And it chronicles crimes. It chronicles the cover-up. I mean, it's a really incredible thing. And I've got 2 copies of it because I really love it. But so that is the jumping off point. Kevin Morris is suing you. What are his claims are on the basis of this? Is it a harassment? And then can you kind of just, what's the latest status on this as we go through his transcript?
Yes, so this is a central figure. The guy we're going to be discussing today is the person paying for Hunter Biden's rent currently. Hunter Biden cannot live day to day, and his wife can't go to the grocery store without this guy. So Kevin Morris is his sugar brother, his friend, and in May of 22, word broke that he was doing this. He was funding his lifestyle. We started researching him. Us researching him, Robert, in his mind constitutes harassment. He said that we were dangerous serial stalkers and applied for a preliminary injunction. Of course, a preliminary injunction got denied because that's utterly ridiculous. I've never even seen the guy in person. This is somebody who has millions and millions of dollars. We don't know the exact amount of his net worth, but it's in the tens of millions. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 100 million because his estranged wife is one of the highest level people at William Morris, the original talent agency in Hollywood, like upper brass Hollywood people. And he sued us in state court in April of 23. So that's the background. And throughout all of this with Hunter, Morris is there. Morris is there in the child support case that I was involved in Arkansas. Morris, as we now know, Marco Polo broke this worldwide in April of 2023. Morris took the 10% stake in the Chinese-funded equity firm called BHR. That's going to be in this transcript, obviously. But he's central to all of this. So this is not some petty personal. I have no interest in him personally. That's what they cannot understand. I have no interest in him personally. It's only his connection to Joe. And so that's why the harassment claims are ridiculous. And even the liberal judge Epstein in LA County Court threw out one of them. The one he threw out was on doxing. Kevin Morris said posting a property record of a commercial property that was online on a county website was doxing. It was a public record. It's utterly ridiculous. First of all, there's no private right of action for doxing. I covered this when I was at your place in September. So he was suing me under a statute that only a DA can bring, according to liberal Californians. So, again, this has cost us, our group, Robert, $200,000.
Wow.
He's literally trying to bankrupt us. And, again, what he calls me a creep 2 different times in this transcript. So we're going to go through a document to where your interlocutor is called a creep. Couldn't be further from the truth. He's the one smoking a bong on the porch, man. Like,
has he seen who his best friend is? His BFF? They hang out all the time.
You know what he calls creepish, and we can go into this. What he calls creepish is being a good investigator. Us figuring out all of his shell companies and tracking his plane, that is good investigative work. That's what the muckrakers of the 1910s did. So what do you do if you're a good investigator? Kevin Morris calls you creepy. And he's just relying on everybody to say, oh, that guy's a creep. It's like utterly ridiculous. He's the first person I have seen to try to get away with, when their deeds are exposed, just calling it harassment. It's such a novel strategy. He's like, wait, if I just call it harassment, then, people know what harassment is, right? He thinks we're like busting down his door and throwing bricks through his front window. But anybody who's awake knows this is total BS, and we're not harassing anyone.
So, okay, we've got that to jump into, and I think that's probably maybe the juicier of the two. But for context, we've also got this other guy, Georges Bergès, right, who is the art gallerist, I think is what we call him, right? He was helping Hunter.
Yes. He runs a gallery.
Sell art.
And one thing that came out during the transcript, we mentioned this in our report, is George is just a normal Californian, got arrested in the 90s for making terrorist threats, spent 60 days in jail. But his gallery goes by the name of Georges Bergès because he wants to appear bon vivant and very French-like. So you'll notice in the transcript, his name is his legal name, George. But in his gallery, it's the Georges Bergès gallery. So we think that's just a funny sociological thing that he's trying to puff himself up and make himself look like, wear French cuff shirts and stuff, and appear more sophisticated to his patrons.
Of course. Well, yeah, you could probably add a 0 to your paintings, if you wear the cufflinks from France.
And call yourself Georges instead of, no, he's just George. Yeah. Hey, if it's good enough for George Washington, you art dealer, it's good enough for you.
But there was some interface right between George, and Kevin Morris. In other words, Kevin Morris was buying a lot of the art of Hunter's art from Bergès, and there was, that implicates a whole interesting chain there. Is that money laundering? What is the sale price? Is he getting reimbursed for loans? There's a lot of complexity there. So
yes,
the two are connected. I mean, in other words, they're in the same circle.
Morris has paid. He hasn't. The funds haven't left him to go to Hunter, but he paid over $875,000 for Hunter's art. But Morris only paid the commission to George. He hasn't actually exchanged money with Hunter because that, 60% of 875 went towards the loans that Morris paid to Hunter. So this is all shell game. And I'm so glad you allowed me to be on the program tonight because I live for this stuff. This is a total, they expect us to be stupid and to buy into their cons, and we see right through it.
Well, and they're trying to silence you and to bankrupt you. I mean, the lawsuit against you in particular is, I think, meant to chill speech, number one, right? They don't want anybody talking about this. But then it's this lawfare, right? It's the same thing that they're doing to other people like Trump in this country, just sicking the lawyers on them, funding it with, like you said, a lot of money. And then you got to come out of pocket $200,000. That's money that could be used towards expanding your message, getting the word out about this corrupt crime family, and they're trying to repurpose that over to a legal defense. And I honestly, man, I think it's going to backfire. I think it's that Streisand effect. I think that it just singles you out as being effective, as being somebody who's really rattling their cage. And so we're grateful to have you, man. We're grateful for your time and for your expertise on this.
Well, thank you very much. And I think that like you said, against DJT, it's up a notch because it's criminal.
Yeah.
They haven't raided me yet, so mine's just on the civil side, but they're doing it criminally too. And you saw what Joe did to James O'Keefe. Joe, for that search warrant to have been done in New York, basically ruining James O'Keefe's apartment, crushing his door with a battering ram. By the DOJ's own regulations, the AG had to sign off on that. So that means Merrick Garland signed off on James O'Keefe getting raided. Why do I bring this up? Because O'Keefe is their guy with the diary. So they're going after O'Keefe criminally for the diary, for his confirmed. It's not a conjecture anymore. It's the president's daughter's diary.
Right.
Whether what you think of that is, your opinion. But she was 39 when she wrote it. So they got on that track. They're going after O'Keefe. They've already indicted Bannon. They've indicted Navarro. They've indicted Miles Guo. I am just on their radar, but civilly, not criminally yet.
Well, it's a disgusting state of affairs, and we're grateful for your work. You have our shield always, and so we're excited. We're excited to have you here, man, to dig into this. Do you want to start with Kevin Morris?
I'm gonna go. I noticed we can start with George because that's chronologically right. They took George's first.
They did.
Okay, so let's start there.
Cool. So let me see if I can pull this up and how we can get this best situated. Let me try this one here. Ooh, I think that looks good. Okay, cool. So I'll do some reading, and then, of course, feel free to jump in at any moment, and we'll go through it, and we'll just analyze it as we
like
hit
I said, a normal show, pretend I'm not here, and if I have anything to add, I will.
All right, let's do it. This is the transcript, the deposition of Georges Bergès. This is taking place in the U.S. House of Representatives. The Judiciary Committee, that's Jim Jordan, Oversight and Accountability, are also joining in. That's James Comer. This depo took place Tuesday, January 9th in Washington, D.C., and we've got Garrett Ziegler, Marco Polo USA here today with us to unpack exactly what happened. Now, quickly, Georges Bergès is the gallerist, the guy who helped Hunter Biden sell his artwork. And this was not too long of a depo, 138 pages here. We're going to hit the highlights, but let's see who was in the room. So 9:58 a.m., Congress likes to get started, 10 a.m., late morning. Who's there? Jim Jordan, Bishop, Goldman, Ocasio-Cortez, Stanbury are all there. So some Republicans, some Democrats. Bunch of lawyers are all there from the Oversight Committee, Judiciary Committee, lawyers, counsel. We've got 4 Georges Bergès, couple attorneys here who are going to be there and with him. Now, there's a lot of preliminary stuff that goes on, and there was a little bit of a back and forth with the Democrats. So the Republicans are conducting the hearing. They're talking about videography. And so, long story short, what happened was the Democrats came in and said, we want to videotape this because we don't trust the Republican videotape, and we're going to be recording our own videotape. And I actually, as a quick digression, I actually really appreciate this. It's like, maybe if the Republicans would have done this, although we didn't have much of that on the J6 committee, maybe we wouldn't have a bunch of deleted evidence, a bunch of deleted videos from Liz Cheney and some other things. But so they get through all of that. Now they're going to say that we haven't released a bunch of videos. Everybody's announcing here. So, and stop me if I'm missing anything important, but they're kind of announcing and they're doing some preliminary stuff, telling them we're going to take a short break at the beginning of each hour. Do you understand everything? Mr. George says, yes, I do. Now,
the only thing that I have to add is on line 18, they say that they videotaped a transcribed interview of a Miss Fox on the 18th of December in Boca Raton. I'm embarrassed to say that I do not know who that is off the top of my head. I'm on page 4.
Page 4. Okay, so
yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit, but I was going through again and making sure that most of it's boilerplate. Maybe we make a star here. Maybe somebody in the crowd knows what that is. I live and breathe this stuff. It is literally my job to know this back and forth, this entire transcript, and I still have not figured out who Miss Fox is in Boca Raton, Florida on December 18th, and they're saying that that's relevant.
Very interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for flagging that. Maybe somebody else has eyes on that, and we'll keep an eye out for that. So the rest of this, they're introducing themselves, and then we get George's name for the record. He says, Georges Bergès. Now, we want to welcome you to this committee. Everybody's chiming in. That's Dan Goldman, Ocasio-Cortez, of course, those two. And then they're explaining how this is all going to work. Now, we're going to make a clear record here. Mr. George's lawyers, state your names. We got Bill, we got Courtney, who are there. And here is the question about whether this is under oath. And so they say, okay, George, you should understand that although this interview is not under oath, that by law you're required to answer questions from Congress truthfully. And do you understand this? He says, yes, I do. You understand all this? Yes, we do. Now, then we get into the actual examination. And I don't know who is conducting this, but here's how it starts. A question goes to George, Hunter Biden's art gallerist dealer. Says, all right, George, I want to start with a few questions about your background. Where'd you attend college? He says, well, I went to undergrad, University of California, Santa Cruz. I got a psychology degree. Do you have any professional background, educational background in ethics or compliance? He says, no. Are you a lawyer? He says, no. When did you open the gallery in Soho? He says, 2015. And how many employees do you have? I've got 1. Okay, just me and my, so somebody else. Just me and my, so somebody else. Now, how many paintings are in your gallery? He says, gosh, I don't know. Can you estimate? He says 40, 50, 60. I don't know. Do you store paintings? Yeah, I do. And are those stored outside the gallery? He says in the gallery. Oh, they're stored in the gallery. Correct. So you don't have to pay separately for any storage, right? Correct. Do you have to insure the paintings? Yes. And what does it typically cost? He says, well, I don't know, but I think I have up to $5 million in insurance or so. On the gallery website, you have a video that's about 5 minutes long. You say, and I feel the relationship between artists and collectors, it used to be a very unified relationship where it's very personal. You remember that video that I'm referencing, George? He says, yeah. You still believe that? He says, yeah. Would you say that it's kind of how you distinguish yourself as a gallerist, fostering that kind of relationship? Yeah, well, that's one of the things. Yeah. And so that video was posted 8 years ago. It's been kind of a principle for the gallery. He says, yeah, broadly speaking, it is. Now, in that same video, you said you've made a salon-style gallery. What do you mean by that? Well, that didn't really materialize. It was a whole gallery. And so they're talking about how people just walk in and look at the art in your gallery. How many collectors do you work with? He says, well, I don't know. And it depends on a year. There's no set number. Do you have a relationship with the people that you buy art from or that you sell art to? Like a close relationship? He says, well, some of them. How about your artists? How many do you represent? He says, I don't know, 15, 16, not sure an exact number. Do you have a relationship with the artist that you try to take in? He says, I try to. Do you know the political affiliations of the artist that you represent? He says, no. What about the collectors? No. Do you care about their political affiliations? No, not really. Because an important part of your job, as you say in this video, is to make your gallery profitable, right? He says, well, profitable, but primarily to have some kind of impact in the art world. It's a business, but not the sole purpose. And there are other functions of your gallery. They don't work unless, make money. Now, you yourself, George, you've made political contributions to both Republicans and Democrats. Is that right? That's correct. And in addition to original compositions, do you sell your prints? Well, it's not the primary focus of the gallery. I'm not in the print industry, so I don't specialize in that. When you first started, how many paintings were you selling a month? Oh gosh, I don't know. It's been 9 years. Fewer than you sell now? He says, no, actually about the same amount. How many do you sell per month? He said, well, it depends on the month. So it's cyclical, right? What was your annual revenue from last year? He says, gosh, I don't know off the top of my head. If you're asking me to make a declaration, a statement on that, I don't know. I couldn't do that. Any kind of estimate on how much money you made? I think we broke even lately. I haven't these last few years. They've been pretty tough. Now, what about when you first began? Was it the same thing? No, obviously most businesses go through loss, certainly not making an exorbitant amount of money, which is interesting, right? Because wasn't he making, it's like, does he get into this like 40% of every sale was supposed to be coming to him?
It was a handsome commission.
Yeah.
Especially for the price that Hunter was commanding. I will say that although he wasn't in the primary business of prints, he did sell Hunter's prints. So if you think that Hunter's art skills are inflated and are partly a charade, just wait till you hear what he was charging for prints, not even the original goddamn thing. Absolutely hilarious.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, because Hunter's artwork, and we didn't really spend much time looking at any of it, but I noticed it was very terrible, and then suddenly it got kind of decent, like there was something that happened there. And
yeah, it's such a degenerate corner of the art world. My favorite author ever, Tom Wolfe, wrote a book called The Painted Word in the 70s even about modern art. So all of this stuff is modern art, and Hunter uses a particular type of modern art called like Yupo paint. It's a type of canvas, and then he blows through straws on the canvas. So again, this is not Jacques Louis David, where you're going to be looking at this stuff 400 years from now. This is people like this, but in my world, in the classical world, this is slop.
Okay, and so now they meet, and this guy loves it. He's like, "No, this is great paintings. Let's put it in my gallery. We're going to sell it to a bunch of DNC people." But here is now where they connect themselves. So, question to Georges Bergès, Hunter's gallerist, says, "When did you first learn that Hunter had become an artist?" Well, I met him maybe a year before his dad was elected, so that's how I knew he was an artist. That's how I met him. So I've been working with him when his dad was elected. I'd been working with him for over a year at the time. So when his dad was elected president, right? Yes, correct. So maybe like 2019, he says, yeah, something like that is when you met him. Yeah. And by December 2020, it had been reported that you had become Mr. Biden's gallerist. And so that's right after the November election. Looks like Joe Biden won the thing. We still have some challenges. January 6th hasn't happened yet or anything like that. But yeah, he's now going to be the gallerist for the president's son. Nice gig.
The investigation of Hunter becomes public December 9th of 2020. December 8th of 2020. December 8th and December 9th of 2020. Ironically, 1 year to the day after the FBI took possession of his laptop. So all this is coming to a head at the same time. You got the announcement by Hunter saying that he's under federal investigation. Of course, he should have already been indicted. We talked about this at length. David Weiss slow-walked it all. Normal person, Hunter Smith, would have been indicted probably June of 2020, truly. If we're being fair about the timeline. They started it in earnest in May of 2019. You could honestly make an argument that normal people get indicted maybe 6 months after the investigation starts.
And so you said like June, middle of 2020 would be appropriate, but is that
yes,
right?
But again, they covered for him, and they're not even DOJ regs require you to be this far out. They were saying we didn't want to interfere with politics, but again, that doesn't stand to reason because they always say that Hunter's not an elected official. If Hunter's
Right.
not an elected official, he should have been charged when the normal person would have been charged. So the only reason why I bring that up is it's all coming to a head at the same time. The investigation's announced. It's now announced that he's selling art. This lobbyist and a fake lawyer. By fake lawyer, Robert, I mean we have a commitment to sobriety and facts above all, right? That's why I love your show.
Right.
Hunter Biden has never been in a courtroom. Okay, he's a fake lawyer. This guy, literally, we knew somebody in the aughts who was working with him. There wasn't even a paper on his desk. He visited him at his office. Hunter didn't know work. He just called people. He was a rainmaker. Again, so just some background about the timing and everything.
Well, and I believe that. And I think that even the DOJ, I think even their unofficial policy is 60 days within an election,
Yes.
I think was what they said, right? So June
And I would come
2020.
back and I would say, what statute is that under? Tell me
Right.
where the Congress, tell me where our representatives put that into law, then I'll respect it. But they'll
Right.
say, oh, it's just policy. And of course, to hardliners like myself, I would say, you know, politely, you can shove your DOJ policy up your ASS. I don't care.
Right.
But again, according to their own arguments that Hunter's a private citizen, they shouldn't go off that because he's not running for office. Maybe I'll agree with the 60-day window if it's for a person on the ballot,
Right.
but Hunter's not on the ballot. They can't keep saying that. One of your commenters said, Garrett, you're slipping, but they don't put an they should have put apostrophe between U and R.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
No, that was a lovely. They winked at it too. But
Man,
what are
you're as on point as you've ever been, my friend. So
we're on
forget
13 or
the trolls.
14. I just want people to know at home that that Hunter never stopped lobbying. He just stopped registering. And when they say that I'm an accomplished lawyer, that I was qualified to be on the board of Burisma, just remember he didn't speak the language. He had never been in the energy sector before, and he had never served a day in court on behalf of anyone.
Right. Yeah, he was selling access. He
Yeah.
was the bag man for daddy.
Yep.
So, okay. So amazing. So question goes to George. So how can you describe what the situation was when you were introduced to Hunter? He says, well, we had a mutual friend and she knows that I'm a gallerist and she liked his work. And she said she introduced me to a lot of other people. But it was, there's this artist. So do we know who that person is? Who is this mutual friend?
Yes.
Let's see if
She'll
they
come
get
up
there.
later. Lynette
Okay.
Phillips. She's in our crosshairs.
Lynette Phillips.
Exactly.
But it's interesting that he just kind of said her, the mutual friend, she. So I wasn't particularly driven anything with politics. I'm not a very partisan person, like very excited about, it wasn't my excitement of seeing. It was just about the art. I flew in, I looked at his art, I liked the potential, what I saw. I also liked his personal narrative for a variety of reasons, but it's a process. And so nothing happened from that moment. And then, we subsequently started texting. He was showing me his artwork, his progress. It's a relationship. So there's no start date. It's like any other relationship, right? So that's how it was. When you say you flew in, George, he was living in California. And at the time it was the Hollywood Hills.
Paid for
and so
by Kevin Morris.
By Kevin Morris. Yeah.
Well,
and so he's been funding this whole thing.
Your viewers, I'm trying to give your viewers background of stuff that they wouldn't get online. So they can get, good granularity. So this one, this is in the Hollywood Hills. The address is 35. He doesn't live here anymore. 3512 Multi-View Drive. So you can see what Kevin Morris was paying for every month for this guy. 3512 Multi-View Drive.
I'm sure it's a nice property. Yeah, I'm sure it's a nice Hollywood Hills. So then they get to this person. Okay, so who is the person that actually introduced you? Who is this friend? Her name's Lynette Phillips. Well, how do you know her? I met her a couple years prior at some French restaurant by the gallery. We became friends. What does she do for a living? Well, I know she worked for entertainment. She did videos for like Rihanna or something like that. I don't know technically what her job is. She involved in Democrat politics? Well, I know she was involved in to some degree in some elements, but I don't know. Wasn't really my focus or the relationship. Do you know if she's ever hosted events where Hunter Biden has attended, like public or like fundraising events? He says, I know she has. Yes. Do you know if Joe Biden has attended those events? I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if. I'm not sure. When would you say this happened? Was it in 2019? Says yes. And Mr. Petard, who I think is a George lawyer, says,
Yep. Bill Petard.
Yep. Bill Petard, cool. And says, and by this, you mean Miss Phillips introducing the two of them. Correct. So Miss Phillips introduced Hunter and George. Correct. An estimation off the top of my head, yeah. All right. Now we have some more questions.
Background on Lynette. We have a whole dossier on Lynette. Couple facts for people at home. Quentin Tarantino was a client of hers. She ran a video production company. She also, this is on her IMDb website, IMDb biography. In 2011, Lynette produced the short film Sabina for the Clinton Foundation. It premiered at the Hollywood Bowl at Bill Clinton's 65th birthday party.
Amazing. So it's funny how all these different people get introduced to one another. It reminds me of the same thing that's happened with George Conway and E. Jean Carroll. And George Conway introduced E. Jean Carroll to Roberta Kaplan. And
here's another Biden connection. Glad you brought up Robbie. We have a huge dossier on Robbie. She's one of the worst women in America. You know who she represents? We've already brought her up here today with the diary. Ashley Biden.
Does she?
Robbie Kaplan. She's in our dossier. We've got one picture for her, one screenshot. You don't have to look very far for a bad photo of her.
No.
She represents Ashley Biden. She was the one who personally sent the recommendation for an investigation to the SDNY. And what do you know? One of her associates just left the SDNY. So one of Robbie Kaplan's associates just left the SDNY, and then he contacted his former colleagues and got a SDNY investigation started against James O'Keefe.
Wow.
Robbie Kaplan, Ashley Biden's attorney.
Wow.
We had to call her a couple weeks ago when we broke the story that Ashley has an unpaid tax lien from 2015. Did you see that? She has a $5,200 tax lien. And, you know, we don't even fault the woman. Ashley's a total wreck. She's a social worker. She doesn't have any money. Our point is very simple. If Joe says that Ashley's the light of his life, why doesn't he just pay the $5,200? He makes $400,000. He's the president. Right. Dude, pay your $5,200 daughter social worker's tax bill, dude. He's a total wreck. But anyways, she represents Ashley Biden.
Well, I think that's a great point. And I wanted to ask you about this in general because there's this whole idea. Well, we're going to get to Kevin Morris, but it's, you know, money is going. My question is exactly the same. Why is Joe Biden not covering for his kids, right? Why is this Kevin Morris guy putting Hunter up in, you know, different places? In other words, why isn't the family taking care of this, paying for the fees and stuff like that? And the only thing I could think of was just to create some distance there, right? Otherwise, the Biden family is going to be paying for all these expenditures that are going to look badly on the family.
And Joe's not generous. If Joe can get away with farming this stuff out, Hunter's never going to pay back the money. Why? Why do I say that with such confidence? There's no track record of him paying this stuff back ever. Right. He stiffed his landlord. They left $50,000 of damage at a Venice Canal rental that Kevin Morris had to go smooth things over. So they wreck everything. It's like that quote on the Gatsby novel and movie that the rich are not like you and me. They literally wreck people and then retreat into their vast richness after they wreck people. It's despicable.
Well, so, didn't they even stiff this guy?
Georges Bergès? That's exactly. I'm so excited you brought that up because I was going to bring that up. He didn't renew Hunter's contract, so George got stiff. That's why. That's why in no sane world is Morris doing this out of just pure generosity. I'm not denying that Morris agrees with Hunter politically, right? That would be mendacious of me. I think they're fellow travelers. But if Hunter doesn't pay back the liquid cash, guess what Morris has? He has 10% of a Chinese private equity firm now that he can sell. The BHR shares are the collateral. He's not expecting Hunter to pay him back, but we can go into that. But yeah, George got stiffed. George had to pay $60,000 out of pocket to put on the LA art show, and he never paid him back.
Wild. Yeah. So okay. So and I want to be cognizant of time. Like this is a big long transcript, and I want to make sure we
I'll
get to
shut up.
Kevin Morris. No, you're good, man. So in other words, I don't think we're gonna be able to read through all of both of them. So if we want to just hit some highlights, of course we can do that. But it looks like here's a nice question and an answer from George. So let's see what he says. He says, "Okay, so you said you went into this a little bit. Can you describe how you went from being introduced to Mr. Biden to being his gallerist?" He said, well, it was just a process. It was a relationship. I liked his art. I liked the trajectory. I liked his story. I always like to tell people that, Hunter, like so many of us, Hunter faced a crossroad in his life. And he could keep going and die or do the hard thing, which is to change. And he did the hard thing. Now, and I think in many ways, this is why I think we like movies like Rocky, right? We cheer for someone because he's not supposed to win. To me, that's America. And I like that narrative. And I saw that he was a great artist and it was reflected in his art and it was inspirational. And that was my motivation with working with him. And that evolved through the relationship of us talking and building the relationship. So there was no date when I became his gallerist until maybe the contract where we had it in contract. But I always like to say, if I really have to depend on contracts strictly with an artist with a relationship, it's verbal, we paper it eventually, but again, it's a relationship. So there was no point, the more I got to know him and hearing his narrative, which is not uncommon in the art world, the issues with addiction and personal issues, but what is uncommon is the ability to change, to make those hard choices, which I think, to me, reflects to me America. And that your past doesn't have to dictate your future, that ultimately we all face that crossroad in our life and we keep going or die or we do the hard thing and change. And he cuts him off. Can I just ask, at this point, were you aware of if Hunter had either sold or gifted his art to anybody before you had became his gallerist? So has he sold anything? Well, I don't know about that, to be honest.
That was one of the good questions that I hadn't thought of. I'm just being frank.
Yeah. So in other words, was this like unlogged art transactions that maybe are not on the record somewhere?
Yes.
I don't know about that, he says, to be honest. You don't know? Well, I couldn't make a declarative statement about that at all. Do you know if Lynette Phillips has any of Hunter Biden's art at all? I don't know. So as you're discussing, as this relationship is forming with you and Mr. Biden, when did you first sell a piece of his art? He says, gosh, I don't remember. Do you need to read the letter? He says, oh, okay, so so December 11th, 2020. Should we mark the letter as an exhibit? We've got numbers, a clean one. Can we go off the record, back on the record? So it sounds like the first thing was sold December 11th. And that's right after the election, obviously.
Yeah, so right after Hunter announces he's under federal investigation.
Oh, that's apt. So Hunter made the announcement before the 11th?
Yeah, I think it was December 8th, December 9th or December 8th.
Then start selling some paintings.
It's in our report. I'll get it right here.
So according to your letter, the question, the first sale of Hunter's art was on December 20th. Okay. So, December 11th. He says, yeah, I believe so. Now, I think that, I'm not going to be off of my head. I think he received 60% and I got 40%. What were the terms of the agreement? 60-40. I don't recall. It was pretty general, but I think that's what I remember. He says, okay, and we're going to touch on this in a bit, but at this point, he said, well, that was the focus on the financial part. That's as a business guy, but yeah, I don't remember. Okay, so George, at this point, had there been any discussions about keeping the buyers of Hunter Biden's art anonymous? Because remember, the White House was telling us that there was going to be a separation between Hunter's art dealers because there was a concern that maybe somebody would buy his artwork for $250,000 or $500,000, and then that would basically buy them access to the White House, right, through Hunter Biden. But if there's a separation there and Hunter doesn't know who the buyer is, there's no risk of there being some access. Now, as we know, we're going to find out that's not exactly how it worked.
And the agreement just specifies what George can do. Doesn't specify that Hunter can't figure out, just specifies that George can't tell him, which is one of their sophistry tricks that I'm going to blow a hole through.
Amazing. So he says, I believe on the first one, in the first contract, he was able to know who the buyers were. So, okay. Yeah, I don't know how it was phrased, but I remember that was the difference. Jim Jordan jumps in. He says, is that normal or unusual? Or where's that? Is that a normal kind of contract? He said, well, that part was different. Then, normally the gallerist does not let the artist know who the collectors are. So Jordan says, so Hunter Biden wanted to know who was purchasing his art when he first started with you? And Jordan's like, yes, perfect. So he says, that was the initial contract, correct? Mr. Bergès. He says, yeah, that was the initial contract, correct. Did he say why he wanted to know? No, I mean, to be honest with you, as we started off with my philosophy about the gallerist and the collectors knowing each other, it was kind of at a par with my philosophies. Like the collector and the artist get to know one another. So it was really, it's not conventional. That was unconventional about my style of doing art, which I thought was aligned with it. So I didn't see so much anything wrong with it in that sense. So, that's it. Now, at what point, when you're establishing this relationship with Hunter, are you talking about potential clientele who might want to buy his artwork? Well, not at that point. I mean, at that point, I was really just working on developing the relationship, nothing with politics, just a relationship. So during my first year, that's what I was working on. Didn't really focus on the contract. I was very lenient. And in the beginning, although it was not a usual request or that I would grant, it was in par with the vision of my gallery about letting collectors and artists get to know each other. So it was certainly in line with the trajectory of how I envisioned the gallery. So he's working with about 15 people right now. And 15, how many of them, when you initially started with them, asked to know who was purchasing their artwork, says
That's
Jim
a great
Jordan.
question.
Yeah. How many of, which one of these things is not like the other?
Yeah, I
Hunter.
just try to be fair, right? Lord knows I'm tough on these congressmen most of the time, but sometimes they really do ask things I hadn't thought of before, and that's one of them. That's just great. That needs to be a paragraph. I'm circling it right now on my iPad. None of them asked to know. This is So this whole idea of, it's just industry standard. These are industry standard things. Total bullshit.
Right. And Hunter, well, the reason why they don't actually care about it is because their daddy's not the president and they're not selling access to corrupt activities. So only Hunter Biden. So Jim Jordan's having a field day with this. Like, okay, only Hunter Biden. Perfect. And how did you introduce buyer A to Hunter Biden? He says, which one's buyer?
They have a cheat sheet that Petard and his other lawyer, the lawyers for Berges, gave the congressman and the staff a cheat sheet. Buyer A was corresponded to a particular painting. Obviously, I don't agree with this. We should see the cheat sheet. And if Marco Polo has anything to do with it, we'll get it. But just going forward, that's what they're talking about with all these letters.
Okay, so we don't know the identity of buyer A, or do you think you know?
No, not buyer A. No.
Okay, we don't know buyer A. Okay.
That's
so
a buyer.
Interesting. So, but Congress probably knows, right? Because they've got the records. They know who it is. That's the cheat sheet.
I would wager they do. It would be very bold for Berges and his lawyers to come in with only buyer A and then the painting that they bought from. I know this. I know that it said buyer A, the type of painting and the amount, but I don't know if the lawyers and Berges provided the name of buyer A.
Okay, we've got a cheat sheet for you if you want. There it is. So he says, I don't know who that is. No. Oh, she's a collector of mine. She bought maybe 23 paintings before from my gallery. She's an established collector of the gallery. I've known her from years. Did you inform Hunter of the art purchaser, or did they meet together? Like, how did that information transpire? He says, no, he doesn't know who she is or that she's bought to this day. Hunter doesn't know.
No. I'm just saying Berges can't make a definitive statement like that.
Oh, right.
He should have a dependent clause, like, to the best of my knowledge. She doesn't know what Hunter. He doesn't know. He can't testify to what Hunter does and doesn't know. He can only testify to what he knows. So again, if I'm the staffer, remember, I'm like a 70-year-old curmudgeon put in a 27-year-old's body, right? So if I'm the staffer, I'm interrupting Berges right there and saying, wait. This is a testimony of Georges Bergès, not Hunter Biden. How do you know? How can you speak to what Hunter does and doesn't know?
Yeah, or did you ask Hunter whether you know that buyer A bought your paintings or something like that? And he said, no, I didn't know she bought my paint. He can't know that. He could have looked on her Instagram or something, right? And been following her on Instagram. She posted a picture of my newest.
Instagram is going to come up in this deposition, by the way.
My newest artwork is posted, and he sees it. He's like, oh, perfect. I know who that is, right? And they connect the dots there. So he says, no, I never, even though I was required, it was never really, I've never told it because, to be honest with you, it's my collector database too. So it's kind of the bloodline of my gallery. It's an incentive why galleries don't want to give away their buyers. And so my inclination was to keep this stuff to myself.
That is interesting. That's interesting sociology, isn't it?
To keep it to myself, even though it was never pushed.
Yeah, Burgess, I studied economics, and Burgess is engaging in some rent seeking here. If the artists go directly to the collector, they can make an arrangement where the collector doesn't have to pay the 40% to the gallerist. So there's an incentive to keep them bifurcated.
Right.
But even that didn't stop Hunter Biden. He still figured out who it was buying his art.
Right. And here's another one. So here we have this as another purchase, right? And so we've got two other purchases here. We've got William Jacques.
Apparently it's Jacques. I was reading through it last night. It's a weird, it's a French etymology, but they pronounce it American. We speak American here, right?
That's right. So William Jacques. So who is that? He's a good friend of Georges. He's a shareholder of the gallery, part owner. He's a mentor and friend. What is his relationship with buyer A? None. They don't even know each other. Okay. A couple of months after that, this woman, Elizabeth Naftali, she's listed as purchasing a piece. Mother and daughter. How do you know Elizabeth Naftali? Well, it says I met her through Lynette also. She's a friend of Miss Phillips. Yeah. How many pieces has Miss Naftali bought from you? 2, I believe. 2 Hunter Biden pieces? I believe so. Has she bought other pieces from you?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah, she's a huge Hunter fan. No, she just wants his work. Nothing else here. Not interested in all my other paintings. Now don't we know something about her? She's kind of
we know so much, yes. Big real estate heiress in LA, got appointed to the same commission that Eric Schwerin got appointed to, which they'll talk about here. Clearly quid pro Joe. She bought one before and after getting on the commission. She's a big Democrat donor, gave, I think, $200,000 to a super PAC supporting Joey in 2020. That is such a good question. So again, for their plausible deniability purposes, they want George to be able to say yes to line 25 on page 22, but he can't. He has to say no.
They're on a mission, and an expensive mission. What was the price of those 2 paintings? One Hunter Biden painting was worth $52,000, and another one was worth $42,000. And
that's the medium income for a family in my county.
It's crazy, man. It's like for one painting that I've got questions about whether he even, painted it. And
we think that there's a collaboration going on. We can't prove it. So that's why we say we think. Again, this transcript, real quick, it doesn't include some dependent clauses that need to be included. George shouldn't say, for example, those two, they don't even know each other. He can't say that for sure. Right. He doesn't know everybody that William Jacques knows. William Jacques is a huge businessman, lover of China. We did a dig on him and looked at all of his SEC statements a couple days ago. And so he doesn't know if buyer A knows him or not. He could say, to the best of my knowledge, I do not believe that they know each other. So yeah.
He's speculating on a lot of this. The questions continue about her, and was she something like an ambassador or something, or was trying to become an ambassador? She got
appointed to the Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad, which basically looks after our cemeteries abroad and other antiquities. Eric Schwerin got appointed to it at the behest of Hunter and Joey in 2015.
Wild. So, question to George: have you ever discussed Miss Naftali with Hunter Biden? Have I ever discussed with Naftali? No. Have you ever discussed Naftali with Hunter Biden? Well, I mean, like she said hi, or I just met with, very platitudes, nothing specific.
That is likely a lie.
So you could just tell from the transcript, man. I would like to see what the video looks like of that, but it sounds like he's squirming.
I mean,
he's squirming in his seat. Platitudes. No, just platitudes. Like it reminds me of Joe Biden, who's just called to talk about the weather, I'm sure. So, okay, question. Are you aware that on July 1st of 2022, Miss Naftali was appointed by President Biden to America's Heritage Abroad? He says, I read about it, but I didn't know about it. I didn't know anything about that. And that was after she purchased the piece from you, wasn't it? Well, I didn't know anything about that. I read it in the newspapers like everyone else. You're aware what the commission is. I think it's about preserving Jewish cemeteries in Europe.
15% of it. And those are important, right? That's about 15% of it.
Yeah, he says, do you know anything about it? Oh, I don't. Okay. So he knows a little bit about it, preserving these cemeteries, but then he doesn't know anything about it. Interesting exchange there. So are you aware, George, that Hunter Biden has previously arranged to have his business partner, Eric Sherwin.
There's an errata. Yeah. They put this out. It says park, right? It says partner.
Yeah. Yeah, his business park. I kind of just corrected that. Maybe it was just a transcript error, but a business park.
You're smart. Yep.
Yeah. Says no. That was while Joe pointed to no. And so that was while Joe Biden was vice president. And he says, no, I didn't know that. So when was it first raised to you that Hunter Biden's buyers should be made anonymous to him? When was it made aware to me? Yes. There was, we had talked about it, so I don't know. As you can tell, even with the first buyer, I never told him. So even though we had put something on the contract that where he's going to tell him, I wasn't really practicing that. So because it's not something instinctively I want to do. So I don't know if a start date of when I started talking about it or I know that we formalized it eventually, we papered over it, but I don't know. There's no time of day. I think of when we sat down, it's just a natural process. So again, like he's kind of stumbling all over himself.
That was just puke.
Yeah, he's just vomiting. But are there multiple agreements that you've entered into Hunter regarding the sale of his art? I think there was just 2. It was 2. Okay, so when was the first one? I don't know. It was 20. I don't know when the first one was. It was obviously before I sold the first one. I remember the process, meeting in 2019, very slow. We went out to dinner, started texting. So you got to give it a few months. We're going to the point that we start formalizing something, maybe summer 2019 or fall, I don't know. And then a year later, we revised it. It was maybe 2 months before the election, 3 months or something. So he wants to zoom in on this. Okay, the first agreement. Yes. And then, but don't quote me on, sure. So then after Joe Biden's election, fast forward to the summer of 2021. Now, George, there's reporting that the White House is involved with working on a deal where Hunter Biden's buyers would not be made known to Hunter or to the White House. Remember that? And only you would know them. Is that correct? Yes, that's what's correct. Is it correct that that it had become public, that there was a new agreement that you would be in charge of knowing who the purchasers were and Hunter Biden would not? It's correct that was a public statement that I heard. Okay, and so when did those negotiations or conversations with the White House begin? Because Jen Psaki came out and told us that they were installing a wall, right?
Yeah.
Something
about as impenetrable as the Eagle Pass border right now. Just, a layered critique. Again, total fiction. Psaki had no basis for saying that.
And here's the line that supports that, right? Here's George. I never had any conversations with the White House.
Yep. So it's total fictionalized. Total Psaki should be approached on the sidewalk with this.
So the White House, maybe somebody will ask her some serious questions about that. So question to George. So the White House has given no input into your representation of Hunter Biden. My client did. My person I work with is Hunter. That's the only person I focus on. So the White House has given no input into your representation of Hunter. And I remember watching those clips from Psaki there at the podium, lying through her teeth to all of us. Question to George, how many contracts have you had with Hunter? 2. And did you have, there's one that's been made public, right? And that was dated September 1st. And there was another agreement prior to September 1st. There was, or after. So those 2 agreements. Now, are there provisions in both of those agreements that you're not going to disclose the buyer? In the first one, I was required to disclose the buyer, the only one out of all the 15 other clients that this guy has. And the second one, it was removed. So we took it out. It was the opposite. maybe we should make that, which one was it? Was it removed or was it the opposite? Was it removed or was it the opposite? Like, did they just delete that line? Or did they say you cannot know or you cannot disclose the buyer? He says, no, the first one was that I was required to disclose who the buyers were. In the second one, I was required to not disclose the buyers. Jordan says, and what changed? What caused the change? He says, well, I was just, I don't know, just what I was where we wanted to update it.
He can't complete a sentence, man.
No,
It's so funny.
He's changing thoughts mid-thought. It's very, I'd love to see the video of this. He doesn't feel comfortable. When you updated the contract, did Hunter Biden come to you and say, we need to change the contract? He says, correct. Oh, man. So it was Hunter who is now trying to change it right now. He wanted it in the first place so that he would know. Then he gets some feedback. I don't know who he talked to, Dad or Jen Psaki, and then he wants to come back and change it. So, okay, we'll mark that as second exhibit, exhibit Q. They'll mark that. Who recommended the changes? You said it was Hunter. Is that correct? Yeah. Do you know? We'll mark that as... Go ahead. Are you there, Garrett?
Yeah,
Do
sorry.
you know?
We'll
mark that as... Go ahead. Something. Do you have a window open? I'm hearing some feedback.
Sorry. Good to go. Good to go.
Okay, cool.
I was just checking a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, all good. I was just hearing the feedback come back on my end. So, okay, so question goes. So when you're seeing in the press that the White House is putting in certain safeguards regarding an ethics agreement, but you've had no conversations with the White House, I mean, did you ever say to Hunter, hey, where's this coming from? This is in the press saying the White House is involved in this ethics agreement. They're not involved in the agreement at all. So did you ever, what was the question there? So when you're seeing this, did you ever say to Hunter, hey, where's this coming from? He says, I might have. I probably did, yeah. And do you remember what he said to you? I don't. I do remember being surprised. And why were you surprised, George? Because I hadn't had any communication with the White House about the agreement. Did you feel like the White House statement was incorrect or not right based upon what they were reporting? He says, I felt that. And I hate when this happens, like they cut him off, right? And this is his own lawyer cutting him off. Mm-hmm. Did you see the White House? I mean, do you know if what the White House statement is, or did you just, I don't remember what, I don't remember what the statement was. I don't. Well, you said you were surprised, right? And so I'm trying to understand what you were surprised about. When the White House is putting out this statement that they've been working with Hunter and the gallerist, that's you, regarding an ethics agreement, and you've never had a conversation with the White House or counsel, you've never had a conversation with the White House, correct? He says, well, that's what surprised me. Well, did you ever see a statement from the White House, or did you just see the press report about what the press was saying the White House said? Yeah, I think, the press reports. Yeah. And he says, well, do you have any reason to believe that the press reports are incorrect? He said, well, they were incorrect. They're incorrect in what the White House statement was. It was incorrect. Was the White House statements incorrect, not the press? He says, I think my issue was I didn't really see what the White House said. I saw what the press said. So I think maybe that was the disconnect. But what the press was saying was what surprised me, because I don't sit there and watch the daily briefings every day.
That was a smart ass thing to say, but on his part.
Yeah. So
again, this is sophistry. This is like Bill Clinton's grand jury deposition where he's arguing what the word is means.
Right.
The fact of the matter is they got him in a catch-22. Somebody's lying. Somebody's lying. And it just so happens that if we're to believe George, then the White House was lying. Perfect. We got it. They can move on. The staff can move on because somebody was lying.
Right. And he's very squirrely in his responses, and you can even see it in the transcript. So I want to make sure we've got time to jump into the Kevin Morris transcript, because I know that's another big one.
No, we keep going as long as you're. I'm watching the comments too. They seem to. I have all the time in the world. It just depends on how long you typically have the show for every single day. But we can go through it.
Okay, we'll keep going and we'll see how we're doing on time. Okay. So we say here, Mr. Bergès, he answers this. I'm on page 30 right now.
Yes.
Now they're
I'm on to.
Talking
Andrew
about
Bates, one of my favorites, Robert. Andrew Bates, absolute scum. This guy. This is a shout out to Brendan on our team, who has a particularly fervent hatred of this man. He is the chief liar. Whenever they want to bring out somebody to be the attack dog, they bring out Andrew Bates. Absolutely. We've sent a report to all of his family members.
amazing. So he talks about him. He suggested, this guy's the White House press secretary. He suggested that the buyer's confidentiality would ensure the process is ethical. Says the president has this is George, says the president has the highest ethical standards of any administration in American history. And its family's commitment to rigorous processes like these is a prime example. It's like, oh my gosh, give me a break, brother. Okay, so when the White House spokesperson is saying that the president has established the highest ethical standards, neither he nor his White House established the agreement or any of the rules about Hunter's art. Is that correct? And the lawyer jumps in. Hold on. First, I'm not sure that George has ever even seen this article. This guy says, well, it was sent to him. And second, George, he can't testify about whether the White House did anything right.
I actually agree with that. Right. I agree with George's attorney there. That was sophisticated.
Right. Yeah, and it's all just speculation. So maybe they've done something, maybe they haven't. He doesn't know. Well, I'll read the article from the Washington Post. He says, this is what the Washington Post says. The White House officials have helped craft an agreement whereby the purchasers will be kept confidential from even Hunter himself. So, George, did the White House officials help you craft an agreement? Lawyer jumps in again. Well, what he can answer is that he talked to the White House, right? Did the White House work with him to craft an agreement? I think that's fair. And he said, well, that was his question. Stop interrupting him. So we get to the question. Can we go off the record? We go back on the record. And then they mark an exhibit from Aaron Rupar.
Oh, absolute scum. Vox is toilet paper.
Vox, Aaron Rupar. So here's another story, which is another story. What's in the binder? We're passing it around. They're sending stuff. I'm going to refer you to page 3. Do you see this beginning with White House officials climate on criticism? No, I don't see that. We're still trying to locate the document. Okay, now we're on page 33. It says, I'll just read it right here. Jen Psaki, said on July 9th, quote, but all interactions regarding the selling of art and the setting of prices will be handled by a professional gallerist. That's you, George, adhering to the highest ethical standards.
Again,
now, that's a statement.
That statement from Psaki, if we're getting into the mind of the sophists, that statement, read literally, doesn't preclude Hunter from knowing any of his buyers, right?
Right.
Just because George sets the prices and sells the art as a professional gallerist, adhering to the highest ethical standards, doesn't bar Hunter. The agreement just bars George. So again, we got to put, and I'm not saying you have to, but the public has to push back as much as they can on this agreement prohibited Hunter from doing anything. It didn't prevent Hunter from doing anything.
Right, and the gallerist is going to be adhering to this, and it's actually industry standards. So they say these are the industry standards that they're following. So the question,
as if Psaki and my friend calls him Andrew Masturbates, but as if Andrew Bates and Psaki have any idea what the highest industry standards for fine art are. They don't have a clue.
No, and they're
zeros.
They're just talking points. They go out there. The media says, well, they're following high industry standards. And so, that's just what they put on the cover of their articles. So the question was, at this point in time, the agreement that you had with Hunter called for you to disclose to Hunter who the purchasers were, right? And then you did the second agreement, right? Now, the provision that was added, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the gallery will not disclose the name of the buyers, right? Yes. Now, is that one last sentence, is that the protection? Is that one provision right there that prevents Hunter from knowing who's buying his art? He says, what did you say? Is that one sentence? Is that the deal? Is that the sort of arrangement that protects Hunter Biden and the White House from knowing who's buying his art?
They're getting at it finally.
He says, yeah. So there's no separate elaborate agreement conforming to high industry or high ethical standards. There's no other White House involved agreement, correct? Correct. So when anyone's talking about the agreement to keep Hunter Biden from knowing who's buying his art, and the White House, and with the White House representatives from the podium several times, Jen Psaki's talking, right? What they're referring to in total is this one sentence, right, in your contract. Lawyer says he didn't know what they're referring to, but he can talk about what the contract says. He says, okay, but to the extent that there's an arrangement or an agreement between Hunter and your gallery that protects the identification of buyers from Hunter, this is it, right? Like there's not another paragraph, another document somewhere else. We're not missing anything, right? And maybe you said this a minute ago, and I apologize if I missed it, but what was the impetus to redo the agreement? You had initially had an agreement in 2020, correct? Right. Then you had one dated September 1st. It was initiated by Hunter. And do you remember how he initiated that? No, I don't. He says, if you remember, tell him. He says, well, I don't know. He says, if you don't remember, say, I don't remember. Okay. Did he call you on the phone? Did he text you? I don't remember. And we fast forward through.
This is Bishop from North Carolina.
Yeah. Okay, so your answer was, Bishop says, I don't remember exactly. I just want to make sure you've exhausted your recollection. Even if you don't have a precise memory, but you remember something general about it. Do you remember? Well, it was an ongoing conversation. What do you mean by that? No, I mean, you know what? I don't remember. He says, no, I don't remember. I don't want to make declarative statements if I can't actually do so. Well, let me ask you this. What do you remember? Anything? I just remember that Hunter said that we should redo the contract. We paper it. We paper over what we were doing. Okay.
That's what they did with the loans from Morris too. It's just painful. But I remember reading this. On Monday, and I told my guys, God, this section was painful.
They papered over it, what we were doing. And I think that's kind of when you make a mistake or you're doing something wrong, right? You use that phrase like, yeah, we're just going to cover it up, essentially. Okay. So to reflect the new contract, because of what we're doing wasn't reflecting the contract itself. I wasn't sharing with him. I already was doing the right thing, and so we just made the contract reflect the thing I was doing. Says, okay, so there was a change in the commission in this one? I think there was. I think if there was something like a 5% difference in his favor, I'm not sure, but it was something like that. So, okay, so the new agreement is he gets more money and you get less commission. Yeah, I think so. So to the best of my knowledge right now, that's what I've got. Now, did you have a lawyer send this agreement to him? Yeah. So your lawyer, it was a lawyer for the gallery? Yeah. And this is the standard artist gallery contract that you would use? Yeah, pretty much, except for the changes that were requested. So to the best of your recollection, you think your lawyer sent this to Hunter or to Hunter's lawyer? Did Hunter get it directly or did Hunter's lawyer get it? I think my lawyer sent it to me and I sent it to Hunter. And the handwritten change is on there, right? He wrote that he printed this out and changed some things. That's Hunter Biden, right? He says, let me see. I don't think so. It looks, yeah, pretty sure that is. It's Hunter. So he prints it off and scribbles some changes. Or he says, he initialed it. So these handwritten changes on there, Hunter's like, I don't like that. I don't like that. So then he initials it. He initialed it. So that's his initial. So he made those handwritten changes in there. Yeah. And I did too. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So for some reason, a Business Insider got a hold of this contract. And I remember seeing RHB, his initials, right by these line items. So literally on the operative signed version of the contract, you'll see Hunter Biden draw through something and then write RHB and then put in the new wording.
Yeah, perfect. And then they just signed it and they're like, we papered over it.
By the way, in normal conversation, Robert, paper over has a negative connotation. I don't know if George knows that. He sounds like an idiot. When you paper over something, that means that you're breaking the
spirit of the law, if not
Right.
the letter. Sometimes both, but you're breaking the spirit of it. Oh, we just need to paper it over. You paper it over. It's like, dude, why would you say that in a transcript? But
Right. Right. I totally agree. That's my take on it. When I hear that, I feel like somebody's covering something up. They screwed it up. They got to make the
plausible
paper.
deniability. That's what
Yep.
papering over is.
Yep. So the question to George, okay, so to the best of your recollection, wasn't that exchange you and him, or was it your lawyer and his lawyer? He says, no, it was me and him, me and Hunter. I was at his house. Okay. He says, yeah, we were in front of each other. His house in Malibu or Hollywood Hills or Malibu? He says, yeah, okay, so you're in Malibu. Did you specifically fly to Malibu for this? No, I think because I have other artists there, I was there. Okay, so I don't know if I went to look at my other artists. I wanted to kind of get this done. So I don't know. I don't recall exactly if it was. And he's like backpedaling there, right? No, I went to go visit other artists. Oh, you really? Who'd you visit? Well, actually, I didn't, he's anticipating where the questions are going and he's kind of walking it back. Okay, so a lot of back and forth between George and the lawyer.
Hilarious comment I want to point out. You got some great people. Dick Warts says, Hunter pays taxes. Yeah, that's literally Hunter pays taxes quarterly every 25 years. That's funny. That's objectively funny.
We have the best chat, man. We have the best chat. The comments are the best. So they're right about that, right? So, and it sounds like he's selling art to pay off some past debts, to raise some funds, whatever he's doing. And so now we get some more conversation with Dan Bishop. Says, okay, now we don't want you to speculate, George. If you had a foggy recollection, that's okay, but we'd like a recollection for a complete record. He says, all right, I'll try not to give you foggy recollections. So Bishop comes back. He says, okay, quite the opposite. And this is a serious point, George. If you have a general or somewhat formative recollection, but you don't remember every single detail, still tell us the part you remember. Got it? Yeah.
By the way, somebody in the comments asked what RHB is. I want to make sure I'm attentive to them. That stands for Robert Hunter Biden. His first name is actually Robert. It goes into one of his aliases in his porn websites. He has Bobby Hunter, Bob. He goes by Bobby Hunter on a lot of porn sites.
And for those who are just joining us, this, of course, is Garrett Ziegler from MarcoPoloUSA.org, the author of the report on the Biden laptop, which you should buy and support their work.
And thank you for bringing that up. That was kind. And somebody asked where you get it. Simple. Go to our website, or if you want to go straight to the report, go to BidenLaptopReport.com. I'm a big fan of easy to remember URLs. So if you go to BidenLaptopReport.com, you can get it.
And wherever you're watching this, there's also links to Garrett's stuff in the description. So links to his Twitter, links to his website. Make sure you're following all that along.
And free, by the way, more importantly, last thing, don't want to annoy you, but last thing is the listeners and viewers right now can go and look at it for free and read the e-reader for free, so you can follow along, and it's keyword searchable. So that's just BidenReport.com. That's the free e-reader.
And it's amazing. If you haven't checked it out, you absolutely should. The level of detail is extremely impressive, and the level of disgustingness that you'll learn about from our first family is also in there as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's really great work. Okay, so we got Bergès is here, Bishop is here. He's saying, was this document number 2 that has some semblance of letterhead? Talking about him having his letterhead. Here's some more about Neftali. Question to George. Page 22, page 39, line 23 says, so we've discussed how certain buyers did become known to Mr. Biden. One of them was Elizabeth Neftali, right? Additionally, Kevin Morris, the lawyer, who we'll talk about here shortly, has reported to have bought Hunter Biden's artwork, right? Do you know Kevin Morris? Yeah. How do you know Kevin Morris? Well, I met him a few years after Hunter. Where did you meet him? I think I went over to his house. I was with Hunter the first time. His house is in California, correct? Yeah. Have you sold art to Mr. Morris before? No. And did you meet Mr. That's another great question, right? So all of these guys are art collectors all of a sudden, as soon as they find Hunter.
As soon as Hunter's selling.
Wow. Yeah. I love art now. I'm a connoisseur. And did you meet Mr. Morris through Lynette Phillips? I knew she knew him, but I don't remember. I don't think it was through her. I think it was Hunter who took me over once. In the letter that you provided today, George, it shows that $875,000 worth of Hunter's artwork was purchased by an entity controlled by Kevin Morris. Is that correct? Yes. And that was on January 19th, 2023. Is that correct? And that's very recent, right? Like literally a year ago from today, just about. $875,000 total by Kevin Morris. That's that one person. And there's questions about that, right? Because not only did he pay off Hunter's tax delinquency, right? But now we have questions about how he characterized that. Was that a gift? Was that a loan?
They papered it over as loans, and these
did.
art purchases go against the balance of that total, shell game BS that you and I see through.
Right, that's
and
almost $1 million.
See through. Yes, of course, this is big money. This is not normal American life for 95% of people. Weirdly, we've done a full digital colonoscopy on Morris, and he was in a movie in 2013 called We Are Not Animals, and the character is the surname of his character in that movie is Kuliaki. So he has an entity called Kuliaki Art LLC, just for all the movie buffs at home. It was a total flop, but that's where he gets
there. It
named.
is.
That's the entity that bought it, Kuliaki.
Yep, and so there it is, January 19th, $875,000. Kuliaki Art LLC bought it. Is that right? Yeah. Did Mr. Morris come into the gallery to purchase these? No, we just negotiated. He had seen some of the pieces himself and also from the exhibition we did. But so this was negotiated over a phone, not him coming into the gallery. And so Mr. Morris had attended a Hunter Biden art exhibition, correct? When was that? At least he, saw the paintings. I'm surprised he even looked at them. When was that? He says the first one was the October, the year after the election. And so what year did his dad get elected? It was whatever. I think 2021. Okay, so that'd be October of 21. Okay, so then that's when it is. He says, did Mr. Phillips attend that? She attended. Yes, she did. I believe so. And at that exhibition, I think you described it as open to friends and family. Is that right? Yeah. Who had input into who would attend that exhibition? Well, the artist, which is Hunter, me, Kevin, friends, his family, friends and family, inviting friends and family. So Kevin Morris was making suggestions about who would attend that exhibition. I believe so. Everybody who was involved was inviting their friends and family. Can you think of anyone else who was involved in making that list? No. The lawyer says this is the list. To be clear, this is the list of the invitees to the art show in Los Angeles. And you'd like to get your hands on that list because I'm sure there's some interesting names there.
You know who's for sure there? The then sitting mayor of LA, Anthony Garcetti, who was appointed by Joey shortly thereafter to be our ambassador to the second largest country on earth in terms of population, India. And it took him over a year to get in. So the guy who went to Hunter Biden's art show in LA, Anthony Garcetti, is now our ambassador to India.
Sounds about right. Yeah, good way to
nuts.
Good way to get a position.
Ambassadorship too. He barely got it, like 52-48. It was close because he's so corrupt. Garcetti's so dirty.
From California. So question was, October 2021, you've already assigned the agreement with Hunter to keep purchasers unknown from him, and you didn't really know who was going to be showing up at the exhibition. So, well, the one in LA, nothing was for sale. It was just to show his art. There was no sale. The goal was to just kind of debut his art because he's from LA and his home base. So the exhibition was going to be in New York. So prior to sending all the work to New York, we said, hey, let's do a one-day exhibition to show all his friends his art, present it in a very proper way because most of them maybe don't want to go to New York. It was purely a one-day thing. And so it was a friends and family kind of a thing. Did Miss Naftali attend that? I don't think she did. Has she ever attended a Hunter art exhibition? Well, she attended the last one, which was last December. Okay, but not this one the year ago.
I'm glad he answered honestly, because through facial recognition, we found her at the last gallery or the last show in New York. So I'm glad he answered honestly there. because we put that in our Substack piece because, Naftali's niece was the first American hostage released. And of course, we celebrate that. We don't want anybody held hostage by Hamas, obviously, right? So we celebrate the release of an American hostage. Nevertheless, we did find it ironic that the very first American released very first hostage released was related to the buyer of Hunter Biden's art. That is just wild.
I did remember reading that. Yeah,
Yes.
I did remember reading that. That is very curious how that works itself through the chain of command. Very interesting. Okay, so question to George. So both Mr. Naftali and Kevin Morris, they've purchased art from Hunter, right? Yes. William Jacks, did he ever attend the art exhibition? Yeah, he did. Bill Jakes, yes. He would appreciate that you add the extra effort to call him Jakes, not Jacks. So the other buyers on the list, buyer
Oh
A
my gosh.
through G.
He would appreciate the extra effort. Jesus.
Well, you know how these people, sometimes you mispronounce their names and they go through the ceiling. So we've got other buyers, A through G. Did any of those people attend Hunter's exhibitions? I think so. One maybe, yeah. One maybe. I don't remember all the buyers. A lot of them are already existing collectors. The majority of them are existing collectors. Question, when I go through your totals of the art that's sold, the totals that I add up is over 1.5 million. Does that sound about right for Hunter's art? Now, I don't expect you to pull out a calculator, but is 1.5 million about right, if you say so? And of that, $875,000 of that was sold to Kevin Morris. Is that right? Yeah. And so Hunter knows Kevin Morris, right? Yeah. And he knows that Kevin Morris was a buyer of his art, right? I would assume so. And then if you go to Elizabeth Naftali, Dan Goldman chimes in. Do you know that he knows? Berges says, I don't know. Question, you don't know that Kevin Morris has put art in his house and Hunter Biden has gone to Kevin Morris's house and this has been reported on? You don't know that? George says he did have a piece of his in his house, but I think it was almost like it wasn't one that I sold. It was kind of like, because he has so much art. All right, and that kind of goes back to that first question, was Hunter exchanging art or giving art outside of George in the first place?
Yes, and that's such a good point. I'm so glad this is being recorded because sometimes, you have good thoughts. Sometimes I'm like, darn it, I wish I would have remembered or wrote that down. But just think about this. By the rules of the art game, Hunter can do one doodle, Robert, and sell that to Morris for $5.9 million. And Morris can then say that's going towards the balance of your loan.
Right.
Because it's completely made up. It's completely intrinsic. So this is why they love this sort of grift. Because Hunter, let's put it this way. Hunter is not going to give Morris physical cash ever. What's probably going to happen, again, this is speculation. I'm using speculative language. But what would make sense based on their history and comportment and character is Hunter do one more doodle and Morris just appraise that at $6 million, and then they get to wipe their hands of it all.
Right.
Such a joke.
And I've got questions about that transfer. I mean, so did Kevin Morris, like if Hunter's selling art for $50,000 a pop or for $250,000 or whatever, right? That was some value was exchanged there. So did Hunter, gift a $50,000 painting to this guy? Did he declare that on his taxes? Like it's a transaction that I think should be inquired about because we don't know how to categorize it. And Hunter already has a history of tax problems and tax crimes. So
yes,
it's worthy of an investigation. But question to George, why? Well, did you take any extra steps or precautionary steps to ensure that Hunter Biden wouldn't know that Kevin Morris was one of the purchasers of the art? Well, if he knew, it wasn't because of me. I would have never told him, so if they know, it's because they know, but not because of me. Okay, but Kevin Morris is allegedly a lawyer, very close friends. He's purchasing $875,000 worth of art. He said, well, which is why I said I assume. Well, listen to his question. Okay.
By the way,
I was reading this. I would be pissed if my lawyer talked to me like that in public.
Yeah,
And
he's kind of.
And this got put down in the transcript. It's like when Bernie got the DNC stolen from him, the nomination. Trump was like, I hate Bernie, but he should do something about this. I would never let Mr. Petard talk to me like that. I'd say I'm gonna find another effing lawyer, dude.
Yeah, it's
And I'm not arrogant. I'm just saying he's like, well, listen to his questions. Like, whose side are you on here?
right.
I would say ask a better effing question. But that's just because I'm a curmudgeon.
Well, I think there's some accuracy to that. So they continue on and said it's fair to assume that there's going to be an issue when Kevin Morris buys that art that Hunter is likely going to find out about it, correct? Correct. Well, he is. I'm sorry. I'm trying to recollect and remember everything. I think he did know. He did know. Who's he? Hunter did know because he did know because instead of, he did know because I think it went against his payment against the debt that he owed Hunter, that Hunter owed to Kevin. So he had to have known who it was. Yes. So he did know, man. It's like, gosh, just spit it out, man.
This is what college education produces today. I mean, this guy has like a master's degree. That's how great inflation works. This guy is stupid.
It doesn't sound like he's being forthcoming. It's like, Hunter knew, you knew he knew, just say it. We can come back to the debt issue in a minute. Okay, so Hunter is, like you said, you can subjectively value this artwork and then hide your money to Hunter in this exchange. Okay, so question. But then Elizabeth Naftali, who also purchases 42,000, total 94,000 in art. Is that right? Yeah, from Hunter. And Hunter eventually finds out that Elizabeth Naftali has purchased his art through what? Media reportings, right? Yeah, media reports it. He's like, oh, perfect. So correct, because you know about it, right? Right. And did Hunter Biden know that your other gallerist at I forget if you stated it was your partner at the gallerist or your business partner, whatever, Jake's. Did Hunter Biden know that he purchased the art? I don't know. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. Based upon my math, just the Kevin Morris and the Elizabeth Naftali purchases, those total 60% of the money that was spent on Hunter's art. Is that right? Okay. So we can say, and if you add in Bill Jakes, it's approximately 70%. So despite the agreement that's been set up, it looks like 70% of the art that's been purchased, Hunter knows the buyer based on my calculations. So my question to you is, he says, by the way, Bill Jakes, he did know about Jakes because he went to his house once and he saw one of his pieces. So correct. Yeah, and so you could imagine that, right? If you buy a painting, you're like, I better invite Hunter Biden over before I ask him for this favor. So can you confirm, George, that Hunter is aware of 70% of the buyers of the art, of the purchase, the total purchase price? Mr. Petard jumps in, and we fast forward through that. Question was, based upon my calculation, it appears 70% of the art was purchased and Hunter knew who it was. My question is, I don't see any safeguards about what to do if Hunter finds out about the buyer. Was there ever any discussion of, quote, we'll refund the money if he finds out, or we'll report it to the White House if he finds out, or we'll report it to our lawyers? Because there has to be a world where you envision that Hunter is going to find out about the buyer, but the contract itself provides absolutely no teeth at all for what happens when Hunter finds out about the buyer. George, do you see what I'm saying? Uh-huh. So was there any discussion with the White House, with Hunter, about what would be done? Would there be a refund? Like, how would that work? Otherwise, this agreement is completely toothless. So what was built in there to prevent this type of Hunter Biden finding out about the buyer? This guy says, sorry, that was
No, that's it. That's the most important statement so far, in my opinion. And it wasn't even a question, it was a statement. The agreement was completely toothless. It was PR bullshit.
It was a fiction. It was just to create, they papered over it, like they said, to give Jen Psaki a talking point. Okay, sorry, that was a long question. Yeah, he says, correct. You're asking a clarifying question, and everybody's getting into it. Stansbury, Goldman. Goldman says, I'm talking about the contract and the breach of contract. So then we get another question. to George, did this contract that you and Hunter laid out provide any ramifications if Hunter were to find out the buyer of the art? He says, which contract? Exhibit 2. Which tab? Q. Got it. Okay. Were there any ramifications if Hunter were to find out? Are you asking if he finds out from anyone or if he finds out from George? From anyone. George says, well, no. And then Ocasio jumps in. She says, just to clarify, Hunter finding out about a buyer in general
annoying ass voice
does not constitute a breach of this contract, right? So she chimes in. What if Hunter finds out through Instagram or something? George says, correct. That is not a breach. Okay, so if you were to disclose specifically that buyer, that would be a breach. Ocasio's, digging in on this. So, okay. So Hunter can just find out from anyone else, but you can't tell him. Correct. And he could end the contract if I told someone about it. So in this specific, the White House questions aside, says Ocasio, in this specific contract between the two private parties, yourself and Hunter, any breach of the contract with respect to you would not need a ramification if Hunter finds out because it's not outlined in the contract. Correct, 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 correct. 3 corrects. And I think our time's up, and so we'll take a break. And so that was a full 2 hours for 11:54. They break at 11:54 in the morning. And so, thoughts so far?
I say we keep going.
Keep going?
Yes.
Let's do it then. So they're back from the break. Now Stansbury is up. Miss Stansbury, I want to ask you a few clarifying questions. Is this a congressperson?
Yes, it is. When their name is not redacted, it is. Yes, sir.
This is Miss Stansbury. Says, how long you been working as a gallerist? 10 years. You worked with other artists? Yes. And is it common as artists to get going in their art career soon as they're getting started? Is it common for them to work and develop out a collection and a voice before they're commercially viable? She says, yes, it is. He says, yes, it's required. Right, exactly. And so who would you say, and so would you say that is what has characterized your relationship between Hunter and you, right? So the relationship you were describing that began in 2019 was just about a gallerist helping Hunter to prepare. That's what I do with all my artists.
Stansbury represents Santa Fe, which is a huge liberal art bastion, just FYI.
Yeah, so she's talking about this. This is kind of cultivation and development. Yeah, so Hunter's untrained. He's just getting going. And so you rely on your family and friends, your family and associates, right? He says, correct. Thank you. So she turns it back over to the lawyers. Dan Goldman, the guy who bought his seat in New York, says, excuse me, counsel, can I just have one quick line of questioning before we get going? Says, hi, I just want to focus in on this list for a second of all the pieces of art that Hunter sold, that you sold. So, okay, Goldman says there are 10 total buyers, right? Yeah. 7 of whom are anonymous? Correct. And they're anonymous because you're trying to protect their identity from public scrutiny because they're mostly regular buyers of yours, right? Yeah. And so these experienced buyers in the art world, let's focus on A through G. He says, well, for the most part. Well, you said buyer A had bought 23 paintings, right? So they're pretty knowledgeable. He says, yeah. They're not dependent on you alone to tell them what's valuable or what's not, right? Right. And also my experience, says George, that I've had now, what happens to artists when I start representing them? Because they become more successful and they become more valuable, says Dan. Yeah, I get them into museums, I get them into Venice, and artists get shortlisted all over the place. And so when an artist gets gallery representation, then people start buying their art. And that's why museum acquisitions are important. And so yes, she, like the first one, is very experienced, but also experienced enough to know that my style of working is very advantageous to the artist. Goldman says, and the only way that you're able to get access to all of that is to build up credibility over time, right? Yeah. And so the people are not just taking it on faith that you actually have a track record, right? Yeah. And I just want to point out a couple sales here. Buyer B purchased this one for $75,000, right? Yeah. And then 2 lines down, buyer C bought another piece for 50 grand. And then further down, D bought one for 85 grand. So based on this, now we don't have Mr. Morris's purchases. Goldman says it's accurate to say 85 grand by buyer D, 75 grand by buyer B. They're the 2 most expensive pieces of art that were sold. Is that true? He says, yeah, that's true. Stansbury jumps back in. Let me ask another follow-up. So look, looking at the actual purchase list here and going back to the other questions. So as an artist is evolving, in this case, it looks like Mr. Jakes, they were initially supporting Biden. Is that correct? Yeah. And then if you look at the kind of evolution of buying over time of 6 months after his first show, we started getting more prominent, well-known collectors. So they're just articulating that this is all natural, right? This is just a budding artist.
Total. They're buttering him up.
Yeah. And he's new. He's like a new kid. They're just kind of showing him the ropes.
Nobody who's new is commanding $75K. Even if you put it back into $1895, Van Gogh couldn't command that. Hunter is commanding more in his first couple of years than Vincent Van Gogh would. This is a joke, and I'm just so glad that in 40 years when they play this back, we will look so prescient. We'll have known the con in the time of the con, which is very rare. Patting ourselves on the back, and all these commenters too, they get it.
Right, and it's open, it's public. These are transactions that they're talking about and are happening right under our noses. So Goldman continues, he says, okay, so all of these buyers, A, B, C, and D, they all purchased like 8 pieces of art, and they all did so prior to Kevin Morris purchasing any art. And so if someone says, are you finished? He says, yeah, I'm done. So now we're back with George. Says, my name is so-and-so. I'm oversight counsel with judiciary. So we're going to try to be succinct here. Thanks for your patience. Now, looking at the top of this list, George, buyer A purchased an untitled piece 2020 on December 11th for $13,000, buyer A. Did you disclose the name of that buyer to Hunter? No. How about Jakes? Did you disclose Hunter Jakes? No. Third line, William Jakes purchased St. Thomas for 25 grand. Did you disclose that to Jakes? No. Fourth line, another painting for 25 grand to Jakes. Did you disclose that? No. 42,000 from Elizabeth Naftali, did not disclose that one. 75,000 for buyer B, did not disclose that one. Next line down, buyer C, just one after the other. Okay, so buyer C, did you disclose? No. Buyer A, did you disclose? No. A lot of these, we'll fast forward through that. Did you disclose D? No. Now, just to expedite things, the rest of the sales, you did not disclose the identities of any of those buyers. No, I never disclosed any of the identities of the buyers to Hunter Biden. No, thank you. Which is, again, is George. It doesn't mean that Hunter didn't know. It just means he wasn't actively disclosing things. So we turn back. Now, you were asked questions in the previous hour about your initial contact with Hunter and your contract with Hunter. You recall that? Yeah. So the first contract required you to disclose the identity. True? Yeah. Did you actually disclose anybody to Hunter? Of course not. I did not. No. Did Hunter pressure you to disclose the buyers? Never did. Oh, never did. Did he push the issue in any way to get you to disclose the buyers to him? Absolutely not. And when you executed the contract, the new provision said that you should not disclose, right? Right. Just papering over what was already what we were doing anyways. There it is again. So all that was, it was a memorialization of your conduct that you had been engaged in with Hunter of not disclosing who the buyers were, right? So nothing really changed at all. You just formalized what you were already doing. And there was never a point where someone would come in and buy a painting and you'd pick up the phone and call Hunter. Oh, I never did that. Oh, never. Okay. A couple more specific questions about your commission rates. If you go to paragraph 3, it talks about commissions. It says, gallery shall receive 40% of commissions. Is that true? Yeah. Is that the standard outlining commission rates with artists? Yeah. Is the 40% commission rate that you offered to Hunter within the range of standard commissions that you would give? Yeah. And he says it's exactly industry standards. It also says that galleries shall set the prices based on their best professional judgment. Is that true? So your contract says that you're going to set the prices, right? Right. Is that clause in line with a typical contract with an artist? Yeah. And it's a clause that the gallerist sets the prices. That's standard, isn't it? Yes. So it's fair to say that your artists are not responsible for their own prices. No, they're not. So you set the price of Hunter's artwork. Was Hunter responsible for setting the terms, for setting the price of his art? It was me. Only me. So the second part of the sentence states that the gallery sets the prices based on their professional judgment, right? So that means you. How long you been doing it? 17 years. Well, he says, if I tell you to buy a painting for $100,000, that's my professional responsibility. I have a responsibility to the artist, but I also have a responsibility to the collector. I'm not going to last in the industry if I'm selling pieces for 100 grand that are not worth 100 grand. So when I do my pricing assessments, I take into account whichever collector purchases those pieces. I got a responsibility to ensure prices are legit. So there's a tension between all of this. That's why I am doing what I'm doing. He says, right, okay, so you sounds like you've got experience. So I had been selling her overpriced paintings. Had I been, she wouldn't be coming back time and time again. And so you set price
to Naftali and Morris because they're not coming back again because they don't have
Right.
an interest in it. They just have an interest in Hunter.
Right, exactly. So they set a price that the market supports. And of course, Hunter has a very unique market factor to him in that he's got access to the president. And you stand by all of the prices that you've sold? Yeah. And would you be able to sustain a business as a gallerist if you sold collectors at unfair or unsustainable prices? No, no one would buy from me. Acting like this is like an open market. It's not, right? It's basically a private market for certain people to access this grift. So I would like to talk a little bit about your process for setting the price. What do you do? Well, it depends. If an artist has a history of sales, I look at the history. If it's a new artist like Hunter, I just do it from my experience. There's also, his name is important, whether we want to admit it or not. It's true. If it's Anthony Quinn or something, it does play a role. But if I like the art, do I think it's going to be sustainable from my professional experience? And then what I generally do is I put a fair price, nothing aggressive. I know there have been media reports about 500 grand. I never said that. And I think you can see I never priced anything at 500 grand ever. I never priced anything at 300 grand of Hunter's art. So I put a certain price, then the market eventually dictates it, right? So this is the intro with the new, especially as a new artist. I give my opinion. I see what the market dictates. So everything was in the work. Everything that paragraph, he says, I've been working with Hunter for 4 years. The market sustained the prices, and so I set it based on sales. Now, I want to go back to some of the other factors you said. Do you consider the aesthetic value? Yeah. What do you think about Hunter's work aesthetically? Oh, gosh, I love who he was. I love his personal narrative. He had a fork in the road like we all do. And what about the art itself? He says, well, when I look at Hunter's paintings, I see hope. I see perseverance. To me, they're totems of the hero's journey, like as Joseph Campbell would call it, the idea that tomorrow is a better day. This is beautiful. Now, sometimes when I look at some of his pieces, I'm having a bad day and a dark piece and I'm just living with it. I look at it and I'm reminded that someone else has felt that way and I'm not alone. There's a feeling of strength in the commonality of the human experience. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty sentimental guy personally. It's just, that's over the top for me even because you can never describe which talents Hunter has. And, it's just slop. But I'm going through my notes here, and I think that this is probably a good time to transition to Morris because we've already established that Hunter knew 70% of the buyers based on value. And we know, and they go through the names already. So if you do want to transition and do both tonight, I'm having gone through both of these transcripts before in full, obviously you have as well. I think now is probably the best time.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, we'll transition over. A lot of this is also from the other side, right? They're just gonna, it's all gonna be, there is nothing else going on here. There's nothing else strange, right? This is all above board. This is just a regular artist who's going into a new career, and he's got a nice helping hand, and it's all above board. There's nothing funny here, nothing fishy here. And so there's just gonna be more of the same pattern from Georges Bergès, the gallerist.
Yeah, I just think we got, in terms of the rack of ribs, we got most of the meat off the bones.
Amazing. So we'll leave this one there and jump over to Kevin Morris. And here it is. So we'll just jump right into it. And we'll start it off
quick.
We'll start it off as per usual. This is the deposition of Kevin Morris, Hunter Biden's lawyer, brought into Congress in Washington, D.C. for a sit-down deposition. He was there with his lawyers. The date this happened, January 18th, 2024. Oversight Committee, Judiciary Committee, Ways and Means Committee, all present. You see a lot of the representatives we're familiar with. We've got Comer's there, Smith from Missouri, Jim Jordan, Bishop, Biggs, Van Dunn, Sparts, Raskin's there, Crockett, you know her, and Goldman from the left. So we fast forward through a lot of the introduction stuff. We've got Kevin Morris is here. Everybody's making their introductions. Andy Biggs is there from Arizona, Jim Jordan from Ohio, and the rest of the crew. Now, we're talking about everybody who's there. They have some video conversation about this as well. And Kevin Morris actually made a statement. So here's this exchange about the video. Again, the left, the Democrats are recording all of this, which is really something I think the Republicans should consider so that they don't lose video anymore. But we've got some intro. Sparts is here. Sullivan is here. And Mr. Morris does have an opening statement. And so we'll fast forward to that. I think I have it marked. Was there anything else that stood out before we get to the opening statement?
Other than Brian Sullivan is the one suing us, who's there with him, and then his longtime friend, Stuart Liner. So Hunter Morris has two lawyers with him. Brian Sullivan, who I have a particular aversion to, because I think he's a son of a bee liar, and then Stuart Liner. Those are the two for Morris. So the setting is you got a bunch of these staffers, a bunch of members, Morris and two attorneys.
Amazing. And so, again, for those who are joining us, this is Garrett Ziegler, MarcoPoloUSA.org. He is the author of the report on the Biden laptop, the authority on what's happening with the Biden crime family, here today to give us some guidance and some assistance as we go through this depo transcript. So, Mr. Morris, Hunter Biden's lawyer, the same guy who paid off his taxes, bought $750,000 worth of art, and has been putting them up in the Hollywood Hills and Malibu, other locations, is now making his statement to Congress. He says, I'm voluntarily appearing here today, Congress, to answer any questions about my relationship with Hunter. Hunter is my client and one of my closest friends. I was first introduced to Hunter at a campaign event for VP Joe in winter 2019. A week later, I was asked to help him with some potential legal issues in the entertainment industry. A few weeks after the fundraiser, I went to Hunter's house in LA. We spoke for 4 or 5 hours about legal issues and other problems he was facing at the time. When I first met Hunter, he was emerging from the lowest point in his life. He's had a lot of low points. Now, at this time, he had no income and his wife, Melissa, was 5 months pregnant. Although he was being harassed by paparazzi, as well as people coming onto his property and threatening him, he had no security protection. In general, I was concerned that Hunter did not have the level of support that he needed, and I stepped in to assist. What a nice guy. I've worked hard to create a life that has allowed me to help my family and my friends when they've needed it, and so I did so with Hunter. In addition to legal advice and friendship, over the course of the past 4 years, I have loaned Hunter Biden money to help him through his difficulties. When needed, at all times, we have had our separate attorneys advise us on these transactions, which is very curious because, generally lawyers are not supposed to fund their clients. They're supposed to
prohibited by California bar rules, but
California bar rules. Yeah. And there's good reason for that because you want a separation between the two. You don't want to commingle funds, and you also don't want lawyers kind of acting as investors into their clients, hoping to get, a settlement. And well, you can do that, but in very like you got to have a trust account. You got to have like personal injury contingency fees. There's a whole structure on this so that everything's reported and it's all very clear.
Yeah, you can be sure they don't have that.
you can get in big trouble if you violate any of these, like lose your law license. So he's playing a very prickly game here. Now, with respect to the loans, I am confident that Hunter Biden will repay, which is very interesting because he doesn't have a history of that. It says, I did not and do not have any expectations of receiving anything from Hunter's father or the Biden administration in exchange for helping Hunter, nor have I asked for anything from Joe or his administration. My only goal was and is to help my friend and my client. A final word. Kevin Morris, Hunter's lawyer, says, this is America. And in this country, there is no prohibition against helping a friend in need, despite the incapacity of some to imagine such a thing. And he's looking at all the Republicans up there. Says, thank you. And so the response is, thank you, sir. Now, the majority gets their line of inquiry starting now. Any thoughts, Garrett, on the initial opening statement? Anything stand out?
No, just, again, it's right in line with their narrative. Hunter's an addict. He can't be held responsible for the things he's done. And he was a real businessman at one point, which we know is a lie.
We do. So the question for Kevin Morris, Hunter's lawyer. Mr. Morris, can you give us an overview, background, education? I know you had quite a career. Can you tell us about it? He says, yeah, I went to Pencrest High School, Pennsylvania, Cornell, got out of there, got out by the skin of my teeth, 1985. Went directly to NYU Law School, spent a term at the London School of Economics when I was at Cornell. After bouncing around, I moved to LA. I started practicing entertainment law. Then I went out on my own. I grew a firm. The firm still exists, but I retired, semi-retired. And in 2021, we had 25 lawyers and 50 employees. We've done pretty well. What was the name of the law firm? So a lot of different names, but no, it was the law firm of Kevin Morris. And Kevin Yorn, is that Mr. Yorn? Yeah. And how long were you partners with Yorn and Levine? 25 years. Are you still working at your law firm? No. What's your job now? What are you doing for a living? Well, I continue to practice under my sole practitioner business called Kevin Morris PC. And then when I retired, I formed two businesses. One was a production company called Media Courthouse Documentary Production. And then I started a business in Pennsylvania, private equity for small businesses. And we put a big priority on charitable contributions. Now, I want to turn, thanks, Kevin. I want to turn now to when you first met Hunter. I know you touched upon this in your statement, but can you give us a time frame on when you first met Hunter? I think it was at the end of November 2019. And when did this occur? Where? It was at a house in Brentwood. What was going on at the house at the time that you met Hunter? It was a fundraiser for VP Daddy Joe. At this fundraiser, did people have to pay to be there? Yes. Well, I don't know if they had to, but there was a contribution. Did you contribute? Yes. And the contributions, they were going to Joe for Prez? Yeah. Can you recall who else was at the fundraiser? Not really. My partner was there and the host was there. Well, who was the host? That's Lynette Phillips is the name. And who is Lynette Phillips? Well, I believe she's in the music. She's a music manager and maybe she manages some artists, but I did not know that Lynette well at all at that time. And who invited you to the fundraiser? Lynette, through my accountant who she was friends with.
That's where I can add value. The accountant's name is Lindsay Weinberg. It's a male. The last name is spelled differently. Lindsay, Lindsaywinneberg. Usually it's Wein, but this is wine, as in like the drink, Weinberg, Lindsay Weinberg. We have a complete dossier on him that I can talk more about.
Amazing. Okay, so they're all, at their cocktail parties recommending everybody goes. And
Big
this is
Democrat, all leftist.
Exactly. So, and approximately how many people were there? He says, basic, 50 people. How long did you stay? We left after Joe spoke. What did he speak about? Well, his vision for the country. Now, at the photo, did you have an opportunity to speak with Joe? He said, I was in the photo line at the end of it. And when it was my turn, I said, hi, Joe. Someone in the background said, Mr. Vice President. And then Joe said, call me Joe. And that was it. So who introduced you to Hunter? Well, I believe it was Lynette on my way out. Can you describe the interaction and what she said? Hunter, Kevin. I was meeting a couple people at the same time. Was there any more to that conversation at that time? No. So the first time you met Hunter, it was at this fundraiser for Joe. And as you're leaving, it's just a hello, nice to meet you. That's all? Yeah. And just for the timeline, that's in winter 2019. Is that true? You believe it's November 2019? Yeah. What triggered the events that led you to speak to Hunter again? It says, well, Lynette called her friend, my accountant, Weinberg, and asked if I would go to see Hunter. And I think I talked to her then. She said, he's got some entertainment-ish issues, and would I go talk to him? All right. Was this by phone, you said? I think so. Did Lynette Phillips on that phone call bring up anything other than just Hunter Biden's entertainment issues? No. I mean, it was pretty obvious that he was in other issues. He had other issues going on. Well, what happened after she asked you if you'd talk with him? Did you get his phone number? Or how did you proceed from there? No, she set it up. A few days later, I went to his house and I met with him. Without giving his address, where was the house? LA. And I'm assuming at that time that you're not paying for any expenses, correct? No, you just met him. So how much time passed between the campaign event where you initially met him, November 2019, and then when you had this phone call where Lynette says, hey, can you go talk to Hunter? He says a week went by. Did there come a time when you reached out to Hunter, or excuse me, when you had this phone call with Hunter? When was that? Sullivan, lawyer, jumps in. So re-ask the question. So when did this meeting occur between you and Hunter? A couple days after the phone call. Was Lynette there? Not that I recall. And can you tell us about what happened during that meeting? Now, Sullivan, lawyer, jumps in, says, hey, we already talked about this. I just want to be clear. Wait, is that Sullivan or it's not a congressperson, right? Is that a lawyer?
No, that is a lawyer. You're right.
That's a lawyer, yeah.
He's going to say, well, there's attorney-client privilege, and he's going to thing.
So we're getting into that, right? And so this is where we get that ambiguity.
Transcript, yeah.
We're going to see a lot of that. And that's because we don't really know what Kevin Morris is. He's a friend. He's a Democratic donor, as we've seen. He's already shown up and donated. And he's also a lawyer. So it's like he invokes this force field, this attorney-client privilege force field, when he gets into some lines of questioning that he doesn't want to answer about. His lawyer's doing it for him. So any information that would be the subject matter of that meeting would be attorney-client relationship, right? So he goes over to meet with Hunter, whole thing's off the limit. Says, can I ask a question while you were dealing with this? Now, Mr. Morris, this is Biggs from Arizona. I don't want to misquote you. I'm just trying to write down what you said. But when you talked with Miss Phillips, you said that she had some entertainment issues, right? So you were going to get together to talk about entertainment issues, you know? And I think I got this right. It's pretty obvious he had other issues. Why was that obvious? What did you see?
He had other issues. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious he had other issues, is what you said, right? Well, what was that? Well, he said it was in the press. Okay. Well, what was in the press at the time? But there was no specific, or I don't have anything. Okay, so this is coming from outside, nothing from a conversation that you knew that Hunter was in problems? No. Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. Thanks. And I just want to put some guardrails around here as well. My understanding, says this redacted person, is Lynette Phillips calls him to say that there's entertainment legal issues, right? Not just entertainment issues, like he can't access his, accounts on the internet, but actual legal issues. I'm not going to ask questions about his legal matters. If they represent, okay. Now, if you ask specific questions, then we'll evaluate that.
Just for the audience, it'll come up later, but very important to set the stage. They're going to ask Morris, have you ever been in court with Hunter Biden? And obviously you can be somebody's attorney and not represent them in court. However, it's much different that if you have a history of being in court with somebody, I think it's much easier to righteously claim attorney-client privilege when you're discussing motions and real litigation. These are just friends, and they're using their JDs as an excuse not to disclose something. It's so different. If you're representing somebody in a trial, civil or criminal, I think it's much more reasonable to say that you have a privilege. There's obviously the crime fraud exception, which you've talked about at great length with Corcoran and everything, but that needs to be pierced here. That needs to be pierced. Morris and Hunter cannot be allowed to hide behind this.
Right. And there's there's indicia of an attorney-client relationship. Like, do you have a fee agreement? Do you define what the scope of your representation is? Have you done any actual legal work? Like, did he send a letter of representation? Did he send an email? Is he keeping time logs? Is he billing, against a retainer? What happened with the monetary stuff? Is it going into his billing bank account? Like, all of these things. And based on what it sounds like, there's a lot of overlap between all of these things, which is a big no-no. You're supposed to keep that stuff separate.
Yes.
So he says, well, I think I can clarify this. And then they allow him to answer. So again, we're treading the line between privilege and not. He says, well, I went out. When I first got there, I wanted to look at his art. He should. Yeah, he bought a lot of money of it. I'm an art collector. And at that time, I knew it was important to him. After we met, we spent a while looking through his stuff, and I was impressed. And then shortly, I met Melissa, and I saw that she was, pretty pregnant. She made us some tea or whatever. And then Hunter and I just began a very long talk. And I just said, tell me what's going on. And then we spoke for 5 hours. And, I began representing him at that moment. And, my understanding of the rules of professional responsibility and so on is that's how you do it. That's how you can do it. And so there are also arguments that you don't necessarily need a written fee agreement in some contexts because maybe you don't have time to get it and stuff like that. But as a matter of practice, lawyers, the best practice is to memorialize your legal representation in a fee agreement.
With a simple email after the meeting, but I guarantee
simple meeting, right? Something to memorialize it. It's best practices. Anyways, so during those discussions, did you discuss Hunter's debts, including any type of loans that you would end up paying on later for him? Can we split that question up? He says, sure. Talking about debts, though, falls under attorney-client privilege, so we're not going to be able to talk about that. Talking about any loans Kevin would have made, I guess, is that a fair question? Okay, I'll start with the latter. Kevin, did you discuss any of the loans that you would eventually pay for Hunter during that meeting? No. And I just want to get into your practice as an actual lawyer. How many notices of appearances have you filed in federal or state court for the past 3 years for clients? And a notice of appearance is exactly what it sounds like. It's notifying the court that you're appearing on behalf of a client. It's basically how you start a case. Somebody gets charged with a crime. There's an open case file, an open docket. So the lawyer sends in something to notify the court that you're there. He says, thank God, none. How many depositions have you represented clients in the past 3 years? In the past 3 years? None. Have you ever appeared in any courts on behalf of Hunter or any other clients in the past 3 years? No, I don't do that, mister. Okay, so it's fair to say that you're not a tax lawyer either, correct? And you've never represented a client in federal criminal law before. Would you agree with me on that? Well, I don't know if that's true. I was a litigator for a while. After I got out of law school, I did a lot of things. Well, you'd remember if you did federal criminal law, I think. But in the past 3 to 5 years, you never represented a federal criminal defendant? No. And you're not a divorce lawyer either. Is that right? Correct. And you're not an expert on state court proceedings in Arkansas about alimony, are you? Would that be correct? Well, what do you mean by expert? Well, you're not an attorney. You couldn't go to Arkansas court and represent him because you're not, well, I am an attorney. Well, not an Arkansas attorney, are you? I'm not admitted in Arkansas. But it doesn't mean I don't know. I'm not familiar with the proceedings in the courts of Arkansas. Okay, so on what specific matters did you represent Hunter Biden in then, Kevin? If you don't do any of those things, which many of them Hunter Biden is now going through legally, what did you represent him in? And the reason this is important is because you're sitting here in front of members saying that you can't answer a question because of privilege issues. So I think it's fair for us to understand what are the contours of your representation of Hunter.
That's really good. That's probably the best question I've heard so far.
Yeah, that's digging into what we want to get
into. It is. We have to be fair to all. Some of these are meh. That was a good one.
Yeah. He says, counsel, in my job, I represent high-profile individuals. Profile. High-profile individuals have basically virtual corporations. And in those virtual corporations, they have all kinds of staff and assistants, agents and managers, publicists, whatever. And what I do is oversee. I oversee sort of the squad. Sort of like general counsel, but I'm involved in everything. And the same is with Hunter. If you check my retainer agreements, which he mentions, you'll see that it's not. It says all matters, and that's it. Which again, it's like, all right.
Good
it's questionable.
Have you ever had this arrangement before?
Would be another good one.
held
Right.
up. I have not had this arrangement before. Do you think that's influenced by the fact that this guy's father is the president of the U.S.?
Right. I would absolutely think so. Yeah, he wants a blanket thing, so he's Hunter Biden's number 2.
If his
So
fixer.
his fixer, which is why he's got to be involved in everything. And the broader the scope of the agreement is, the more force field protection he has. He can now invoke it for everything. So, question, are you able to tell us when the retainer agreement was executed? He says later in 2020, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I don't remember. But there is a retainer agreement in place between you and Hunter. There was 2. And a conflict waiver? Well, and a conflict waiver. And so a conflict waiver is like, your attorney might have a conflict of interest, but you waive that.
Do you know what is also relevant? I'm chiming in here not to interrupt, but to say that Brian Sullivan, the guy who's representing Morris in this deposition right here, he also represents Hunter. So I guarantee you they had to, if they were doing things legally, they had to sign a waiver for Brian Sullivan to represent them
Got
both.
it.
I mean, we have to do the same thing with Marco Polo, right?
Yeah.
It's easy because the interest of Marco Polo and the interest of Garrett coincide, but sometimes in other matters they don't.
Right. So what Garrett's talking about is lawyers, have obligations to their clients. And if you have 2 clients that might point their fingers at each other. So for example, if Hunter points his fingers at Kevin and Kevin points his fingers at Hunter, now you've got one lawyer representing the both of them. Now they've got a direct conflict and the lawyer essentially has to get off both cases, right? And so, when there's conflicts like that, the clients can waive that conflict knowingly though. And so they've executed that because they're keeping it all close to the vest, which I think is, which is the right play. Try to keep it all bundled up.
They're doing as much as they can to maintain plausible deniability.
Yep.
Except for that damn laptop. The laptop shatters everything, and that's why I'm so obsessed with it. They didn't.
Well,
One thing that got under Morris's skin is he never war gamed for this. Remember, Morris was going to rehabilitate Hunter in 2019. He starts a documentary company. He's going to tell the story of the resurrection of Hunter Biden, and the laptop shits on that.
it's amazing work.
That's why he hates me so much, because we put out this dossier on the laptop. He hates that.
And you can get your copy of it following the links in the description at marcopolousa.org as well. So here's Jim Jordan. He jumps in. Here's another one. Sullivan says, actually, let's back up here. I skipped ahead. Now, has Hunter, here's the question. Here's the answer. In my connection with representation of people, we often hire lawyers for different matters. It's my job to oversee that, and I'm involved in each piece. They report to me. So the question was, has Hunter Biden paid you for your legal services? He says, sorry, the payment of the fee, that's attorney-client privilege. That's a no-go. Jim Jordan jumps in. Does Abby Lowell report to you, Kevin Morris? Again, cuts him off. Any information Mr. Morris would have, Jordan says, no, he said he hires lawyers and they report to him. And I'm just asking if that lawyer specifically reports to Kevin, Abby Lowell. But Mr. Jordan, I said it with respect to my other clients in the past, with respect on this issue. This is Kevin. Abby does not report to me. Jordan says, okay. Question for Kevin. Now, you represented everyone here, that you're Mr. Hunter's attorney. You became his attorney on day 1, I believe, of your meeting for all of the matters. And I'm sure you're aware that there are ethical rules in place on lawyers if they are to give loans to their clients, right? Yeah. So I'd like to get into the loans themselves. It's been reported and referenced in court filings that you loaned millions of dollars to Hunter. Is it true that you loaned millions of dollars to Hunter? Yeah, it's true. Are you able here today to tell us how much money you've loaned to him? I'm not sure the exact amount. We total up the amount periodically and update the notes. So his bookkeeper is like, how much more is Hunter spending at all the residences that he's putting him up in on his cable bills? Are you aware of the most recent updated amount that you reported? No, I don't remember, So question, we sent you a letter. Our committee sent you a letter. In the letter we discussed, we're going to talk about the loans. I sent this to your lawyer too. Now you're the attorney for Hunter who represented him since day 1. And I just want to be clear, sitting here, you did not prepare as his lawyer. You did not prepare to know the total amount of loans that you've given Hunter when that was going to be the subject of the interview? So you don't have any idea? Like you didn't do your homework? No, not to the number. Okay, well, then let's go through them. He says, if we could, let's go to exhibit number 1. He gives it to him. He says, I want to direct you to paragraph 17. Now we're looking at the indictment in California, dated December 7th. Please let me know when you've read paragraph 17. He says, I've read it. So just for the record, Chairman Smith walked into the room. He's on Ways and Means. And he says, we're going to go into it. Paragraph 17 says, from January through October 15th, this is the DOJ speaking, an entertainment lawyer from Hunter's indictment, aka a personal friend called Kevin Morris, provided to Hunter with substantial financial support, approximately $200,000 to rent a lavish house on a canal in Venice, California, $11,000 in payments for his Porsche and other individual items. In total, Hunter had Kevin Morris pay over $1.2 million to third parties for Hunter's benefit from January through October 15th of 2020. So they just read the indictment, which I absolutely love that. Oh, you don't remember the number? Let me show you the criminal indictment against Hunter. To begin, are you the personal friend that's referenced here? Kevin says, counsel, it doesn't name me. I don't suppose to know what the prosecutors are saying here. Okay, no, but are you the person who's named here, Kevin? Did you give these loans to Hunter? Again, counsel, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I told you, I loaned Hunter money. And again, my name is not in there. It's an important document. It's a federal indictment, and I don't want to say anything about it. So this indictment, it doesn't say Hunter Biden's lawyer does it. It refers to you as a personal friend. And some people jump in. One at a time, says the court reporter. Shout out to our court reporters. We love our court reporters here. Sullivan says, okay, you had assumed that. You made an assumption when you said it refers to you. Mr. Morris hadn't said that it refers to him. He's not willing to say that because he didn't write the indictment. Kevin says, I'm confused. You're asking him to make an assumption. He says, sorry, I'm confused. It says an entertainment lawyer, says Kevin Morris. But it referred to you as a personal friend. He says, no, but you're an entertainment lawyer, right? And you're a personal friend? Yeah. Of Hunter Biden? Yeah. And you're the one who provided payments and loans to Hunter for a canal in Venice, right? Yeah. And you also provided loans for Hunter to pay for a Porsche, right? Well, not exactly. The Porsche was upside down, and he was trying to get rid of it and he was behind, so it was upside down. He couldn't give it back until he paid the $11,000. Well, you don't dispute between January and October of 2020, you gave Hunter loans that totaled over $1 million, do you? He says, again, I don't have the exact numbers, but I don't dispute that. And just so we have the timeline, you meet Hunter Biden at a Joe Biden campaign event, November 2019, approximately, and then the loans start going out to Hunter in January 2020. Is that correct? I believe so. So within 6 weeks and 2 months of meeting Hunter, through Lynette Phillips, you start giving out loans to him. Is that true? Yeah, I started lending Hunter Biden money. That was almost always direct payments to third-party vendors. And yeah, it was within a month. Now, those loans at this point, did you have an agreement in writing as to how those loans would be repaid as of January 2020? As of that date, no. We documented the retainer agreement, whatever you're saying. And again, I don't know if that's an official document or an email or whatever, but I was acting as a lawyer, sure. Okay, that's not my question though. There's different agreements in place. You had a retainer agreement, which I'm not asking about. You have a loan agreement, which you said in your opening statement that was agreed upon between your attorney, a separate attorney, and Hunter's separate counsel. You said that in your opening statement. So I'm asking now about the loan agreement. Okay. The repayment. Okay. Was that loan agreement, was that in place in January 2020 when you first began giving loans to Hunter? No, we documented it a little later. Okay, what does a little later mean? When is that? I don't remember. Was it a year later? Was it 6 months later? Might have been. Counsel says, are you referring to the written agreement? Yeah, it's a written loan agreement. So again, just to clarify, because your attorney asked, but I want you to answer it again. It's your testimony that in January 2020, when you first began giving loans to Hunter, there was no written loan agreement in place at the time. Is that right? Right. And now I'd like to go to Big
Robert,
says,
I have a question for you. If Morris decides to forgive these, does he have to pay gift tax on that 5.9? That's a legal question I can't answer.
So that would be a tax attorney question, but yes, I would think so. They would have to classify it as something, right? If it's not a loan,
if he forgives the loan.
If you forgive the loan, yeah, I think you still have to declare, that becomes taxable. So I think it's the same issue. Like if the federal government waives your student loans or something, you're talking about the benefit to the person. And if you're going to repay a loan back, then that is consideration, right? You're actually exchanging something. So I think for tax purposes, I think the IRS would require him to pay a gift tax on that. And again, I'm not a tax attorney, and that stuff makes my brain fry. But yeah, I think it wouldn't be a loan. It would be a gift, and there would be a consequence to that. But I could be wrong. So talk to a tax counsel about that one. But I think
it's for the sake of our respective readerships and audiences, we should do a deep dive on that, because that's what's going to happen. There's no way he gets that liquid cash except if Joe dies.
Right, and I think I don't know how they're going to try to structure it, or like what is that $875,000 art purchase going to go on his tax records as? And what are these loans going to go into his tax, his business filings as? How are they going to classify all this stuff? I don't know. The next question is the DOJ going to, would the IRS or the DOJ do anything about it anyways, since they've been covering up for him for years now? But although they're charging him now, so maybe that
I think that, let's put it this way, the Delaware charge is stupid. They should get him on drugs before they get him on the gun thing. The gun charge is stupid. The California one has teeth. It's still a limited hangout, but we have to be objective. And the California one is legitimate. I mean, there's so much felonious activity there.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments in the chat, people saying, yeah, you can gift a certain amount, but if it's a forgiven debt, it is taxable. I think that's the general answer on it. Tax code is very complicated. I took it in law school. The book is like the tax code book is like two of the Marco
That would be a
books.
life I could never lead. You couldn't pay me $50 million a year to be a tax attorney. Now, one comment that came up that it's a question they should have asked is both to Berges and Morris is, have you ever witnessed Hunter Biden paint? Now, I submitted that to the congressman and then asked, for the record, can you supplement the record today by submitting a video of Hunter Biden painting? And that's one thing we haven't gotten. Nobody's seen a video of Hunter Biden painting. I want to see.
Yeah, there was a dramatic difference in his skill set, because we used to see the moldy bowl of milk that looked like COVID, and now there's some nice colors and things to them. So, okay, so we are going to carry on, and let's get back to the transcript. So Morris is still here. So again, Kevin, just to clarify, because your attorney asked, and I want you to answer the question again, it's your testimony that in January 2020, when you first began giving loans to Hunter, there was no written loan agreement in place at that time. Is that correct? Correct. No written agreement in place. Now, we get some other questions. I want to ask a few questions for the panel, not meant to be adversarial, but these were unsecured loans. You didn't have any collateral for them. Is that right? Correct. And you executed a promissory note at some point after the transfers or the payments were made. Is that true? Yeah, there have been a bunch of promissory notes, a series of promissory notes. Yeah. Are they subject to a unified loan agreement, or did you do a separate loan agreement? I don't think so. And then I just want to make sure, were these no interest loans that you're talking about in this particular paragraph? He says, no. When we did documents or promissory notes, I know it's required of a note, so yes, we do all of that. So there was interest in it, yes. And I just want to clarify, you did, regardless of whether you accepted that, you mentioned in paragraph 17 here that we've looked at, you did pay for what I think was a $200,000 place in Venice. Is that true? Well, I don't know if that's accurate. It was monthly, so whatever it was. But you were making those payments for 10 months, weren't you? For a while, yeah, I was. And same thing with the Porsche. I understand you said it was upside down, and you just caught him up on the balance, right? Yeah, I squared him up. And then there was another $1.2 million that was also mentioned here And one thing you said a moment ago is that you had a third-party vendor or whatnot. I'm just curious, who were those people? Well, there are lots of them, third-party vendors. I don't mean that as a term of art, but there are a lot of people there. My thing is building teams. I got a big team. And so he owed, I don't know, I'm just trying to surmise from what you said. He apparently owed money, as we used to say when I was practicing all over town. Is that what you're suggesting here? He says, I don't know. He had debts, and you paid, and you were paying off those debts to multiple partners. Is that fair? I don't know if there were any other debts other than his IRS bill. There was, he had a divorce. And Big says, so I'm not understanding who you were making the payments to, because you apparently were paying some mortgage company for the Venice house. You paid some car loan entity for the car to catch him up. You put another 1.2 million out. Now you're suggesting just a second ago that it may have been for the IRS, but he also had a divorce. So who were you actually paying? Who was getting the money from you? The proceeds that you were paying on behalf of Hunter? I don't know. He says, I think you have a list. I need to hire a security company at the beginning because it was dangerous, and he had very little support.
Such a cop-out. In his lawsuit against us, he said he was getting threats. There's no evidence for any of this. They haven't submitted any threats that Morris or Hunter's received. It's just, the big bad Trump people. They're acting like little girls.
So he's saying that Hunter's getting threats, and apparently you're saying he's getting threats.
Yeah, that'll come up later when he calls me.
Okay. So security, divorce, IRS, any other entities? He says, well, I think a PR company. I don't know. I got to refresh my memory. He says, so you have a list somewhere, says Biggs. He says, yeah, I think so. You have it too. Biggs says, well, I personally don't have it, actually. I'd be asking you if you can verify it, but I don't have it. He says, hopefully I'll get to see it. Then we can cross-check it, but I don't have it. So now we get back to page 16. Page 16, they say, Mr. Morris, let me know when you're there. He says, I'm there. Now, apparently, this is back from the indictment again. So he says, okay, quote, at the same time, Hunter spent large sums to maintain his lifestyle from January to October 2020. In that period, he got financial assistance of $1.2 million from a friend. Financial support included hundreds of thousands of dollars for accountants, lawyers, his Porsche, media relations, housing. For example, Hunter spent 17 grand each month, about 200,000 for a house in Venice Beach. Now, I want to go through the different categories here. And the lawyer chimes in, just be cautious about attorney-client stuff. Okay. So he says, beginning, Sullivan objects. I'm objecting to this, that the personal friend is him. We don't know who wrote that. So again, his name's not in the indictment, so we don't know it's him. So you're not suggesting that there's another personal friend who gave the exact same loans to Hunter, are you? No, I'm not making any suggestions like that. It's just not my client's name. Okay. Morris says, Congressman, this is a federal indictment. My name is not in it. I'm not going to comment on it. We know it's you. Is it accurate that you were paying for $17,500 each month? He says, I wasn't paying for anything. I was loaning Hunter Biden the money for things. At the time I met him, he was in danger in his house. Paparazzi was there. People were coming to his door with cameras saying, we just want to talk. People were yelling from outside the bushes, Hunter Biden, come out. Hunter Biden, come out. Melissa was 5 months pregnant at the time. So I got him security, and he needed to move. And we had to find a place quickly. We had to find a place that had privacy, and we ended up with that house. And Kevin, do you have an expectation that Hunter is going to repay the money to you? Yeah. Do you have any sort of time frame? He says, there's a balloon on the note. I think it's 2025. The time frame only goes from January through October 20. We're now in 2024. Kevin, have you paid for other residences for Hunter other than the one in the federal indictment? He says, again, I haven't paid for anything. I've loaned him the money. And have you paid through loans for Hunter's rent or mortgage? I don't know the situation, whatever it is you were doing from 2020 until today. He says, no. When did you stop giving loans for Hunter Biden's residence? About a year ago, presumably after he started selling some art. And so it's fair to say that you were paying for Hunter's residence up until 2023, approximately. And were the payments for Hunter's residence in the form of loans consistent with this payment? He says, the price, was it around the same price as $17,500? He says, I believe so. Now, do you recall how much you've paid to lawyers via the loans? And Sullivan says, I know it goes into the loans, but again, attorney-client privilege. You're loaning money to Hunter, right? Kevin says yes. Now, as part of the loan to Hunter, if I were to go get a loan, you got to tell the bank why you're getting a loan. Like, I'm getting a loan for my house. I'm getting a loan for my car. So each time Hunter gets a loan, does he have to come to you to get the loan? He says Hunter doesn't ask. Hunter doesn't come to me. He's never asked for anything. I've done these things voluntarily. I have an idea of what they were, and I keep a record. And the ones that are absolutely necessary, I take care of with a loan. So do you give him like an allowance? Like you give him $1 million a year and he just goes and pays off whatever debts he has? Or do you pay the third-party vendor yourself and keep track of the loan? How does it work? Kevin says, I'm glad you asked this, counsel. I don't loan Hunter, he corrects himself. I don't loan Hunter Biden cash or amounts of money. Hunter Biden, I've loaned for things that are acute. And he has been basically unemployed without a source of income for the entire time I've known him, except for those $50,000 paintings that he sold to Naftali.
I want to underline that because he blew through all the Chinaman cash. I mean, this guy's a total decrepit. And Joe said so the smartest man the U.S. president knows from a pure intellectual capacity has been basically unemployed for the entire time Kevin Morris has known him.
Right. And
what does he do all day?
And he was also making $83,000 a month, I believe it was, right, from the Ukraine Burisma stuff. So he had a ton of money that was not, that is all now gone. Okay, I'm going to take just 2 seconds. I'm going to restart a stream on locals. We're going to restart our locals stream. And let me...
Sounds good. Do I need to get off?
No, you're good to go. I'm just telling you what I'm doing, which is why I'm not talking right now, because I'm just going to reconnect these tubes over here so that our locals friends come back and join us. And so this should be restarting here in just a quick second. Okay, so locals friends, you're going to be joining us in a second. Hopefully those tubes are reconnecting and we'll carry on. Let me just make sure this starts up. And it should be coming in hot. Okay, so we'll get back to there it goes. So we're back on the transcripts. So the question to Kevin Morris. So have you paid millions of dollars for Hunter Biden's legal fees via loans? Again, he says, that's attorney-client relationship. And they talk about that breaks the privilege. And yet I'm also going to call, so the attorneys are getting into this. So my question is, has Mr. Morris ever disclosed to anyone who's not a part of their legal team how much money he's paid in legal fees? Would that breach the privilege? Then that would break the privilege and it's moot. So, and just so I don't know the answer, but can you talk with him and see? I'm also going to call Hunter's other lawyer as well. Maybe it's a good time for us to take a break now. And they update the record. Dan Goldman's in the house. And here we go. Chairman Smith from House Ways and Means Committee is now asking some questions. Mr. Smith says, Mr. Morris, thanks for being here today. Could you please describe your business relationship with Viacom?
We were behind these questions. We wanted to get to the bottom of this. There was a public merger that went south, and somebody was forced to pay $200 million, and he has a relationship with Viacom. So we just wanted to get him on the record, because if anything comes out later on and we have him on the record now, we're going to nail him.
Amazing. So the question goes to Morris. He responds. Viacom owns MTV. MTV owns Comedy Central, and therefore they were the other side for me for a long time on a lot of different things, but I certainly don't work for Viacom. You never worked for Viacom? No. You ever spoken to Hunter or Joe or any other member about Viacom? I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, can we break that up? Well, let's say he does. Have you ever spoken to Joe Biden, any member of the Biden administration, about the merger with Viacom? No. No. How many times have you been to the White House since Joe has been president? Twice? Only twice. And he says, well, I was at a picnic last year. I didn't go into the White House, but I was at the 4th of July picnic. So 3 times? Yeah. And what were those 3 visits for? So not 2, 3. And one was, the first one, 2021, Hunter took me to the White House to let me see it and give me a little tour. Did you talk to President Biden when you were there? At the end of the day, we were in the outside area. Hunter's friendly with a lot of people there. And when it was around 5 or 6 o'clock, Hunter went in and said hi. And the president waved. And I think he said hi. He always makes jokes about my hair. I think he made a crack about my hair. That was it. So that was your first time. What was your second time? Second time, I was at Naomi's wedding at the White House. At the White House. Did you talk to Biden? Oh, just a quick hello. Probably talking about the weather. Okay. Have you helped out any other individual to the degree that you've helped out Hunter Biden? Have you ever gotten into this and done this before? He says, Morris says, Congressman Kevin, I've had clients for 25 years. I've helped them out in a lot of ways, a lot of clients, a lot of ways. You ever to the level of $5 million? I've helped my clients to the extent of their needs. Very lawyerly answers there. Has there ever been anyone that you've given more than $5 million for? Not that I can recall. Okay, says Jason Smith. No other questions. Big says, are we getting close to wrapping up? Because I do want to go back to the privilege question before. Now, I want to understand the assertion of privilege that you're trying to make. Now, I'm not trying to be adversarial here, but I just want to know. I'm trying to understand. So what we're seeing here is you paid ostensibly some attorney's fees that Hunter was accruing because he had a different lawyer representing him on different matters. Is that fair? He says, you know, counsel, I don't know how you have it. I've made a document production in conjunction with the grand jury investigation. I don't know where you, and he cuts him off. He says, look, I'm not a part of the grand jury, so I'm asking questions for this interview, for this transcribed interview today. So answer me. So Hunter Biden has a different attorney for different matters, a series of different matters. Is that fair? Yeah. And you let Hunter money to pay those attorney's fees. Is that fair? Yeah, that's what's been characterized here today. He said, well, that's a little oversimplified, says Kevin. You know, various attorneys had various fee agreements and I paid lawyers. Sure. On behalf of Hunter, though. Yes. And those would go to that, the series of notes that you've mentioned earlier. Correct. Is that fair? Yeah. Now you're writing checks to Hunter's attorneys directly because you've said that's how you did it. You were paying these third parties directly. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay. So really the privilege, the attorney-client privilege here that you're trying to assert is null because the attorney-client privilege exists between Hunter and Hunter's lawyers, not between you and Hunter's lawyers. You understand that? No, I don't understand that. Lawyer jumps in. No, he says, I don't understand that my attorney-client privilege or Hunter's, is distinguished by having other attorneys. No. I'm not saying that because in the matters that you're representing him on those legal matters, yeah, if you're representing him, absolutely you've got privilege. But what you're asserting here is that when you're writing checks to another attorney, the other attorney has the privilege. And what you're saying is get you to dovetail into their privilege. The lawyer jumps in. We've acknowledged that he's paid. He's already loaned money. I know, but I redact the amount that's been paid. And I do think that is privilege, says Morris's lawyer. Okay, but you understand what I'm saying is that the privilege actually exists between Hunter's lawyer, which is Kevin, Mr. Biden's attorney on that matter. And Biggs continues, I would assert that to you that the privilege does not exist between what Mr. Morris paid because he's the third party now and he doesn't have privilege to hide that stuff. Lawyer says, but he's also the attorney for Hunter and he knows about it. And so they're fighting over this. Morris jumps in. Look, Congressman, I didn't pay for anything. I loaned Hunter Biden money. Number one. He says, well, you wrote the check. He says, number two, I think we're getting into a debate over the definition of privilege. And you and I can debate that all day long. This is fair enough. It is a bit of debate. The only reason is because you're refusing to answer the question. Bishop jumps in. I'm pursuing that with one more. Mr. Morris, Chairman Smith asked you a question about whether you talked to Hunter about the Viacom merger. Was the Viacom merger within the subject of your representation of Hunter? He said, actually, I got to carve that out. I had said to carve that out. And so the question was whether he spoke with Joe or the White House. That's why I'm pursuing this question. Was the Viacom merger subject matter of your attorney-client relationship with Hunter? Morris says, I would argue that it was. He says, let's hear him out. He says, there have been a lot of ridiculous rumors about what I've done. That one is the most ridiculous. I was not involved in any way with Viacom's merger. It's not something I do. It's not something that they would talk to me about.
We didn't
Okay.
see, for the record, we don't think he was, we're not saying that he's directly involved. The better notice, he didn't say that I've never discussed it. He said, I'm not involved in the merger. That's, so it still leaves him some wiggle room.
What's the background on the merger? Are you familiar with that? What was the conflict here?
The conflict concerns the largest termination fee in U.S. corporate history because the merger between Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House fell through. And if they had a clause in the attempted merger that if it didn't, one party had to pay the other $200 million. And so the question is, was Morris involved in any way with the U.S. government's decision to intervene? Because the U.S. DOJ blocked the merger and it went to trial. And Joe oversees that DOJ. So that's the question. We have no proof of Morris's involvement. That's why they ask questions, and he was offended by the question.
Okay, great background. Thank you for that. So Bishop says, okay, so it's not within your attorney-client relationship. I'm trying to test this attorney-client privilege conversation. Bishop says, you don't contend that the Viacom merger, was within the subject of your attorney-client relationship with Biden, do you? He says, yeah, I don't deny that. So you don't deny? He says it's just kind of semantics. Did he seek your advice with respect to Viacom? And Sullivan is still battling on this. Goldman jumps in. Says, we're going to pause the majority's time. Goldman jumps in, Dan. He says, okay, just because you're going to discuss this at the break, I think what would be helpful for us is to understand if you're acting as Hunter's lawyer, then you get attorney-client privilege. So I think we need to understand exactly what the relationship was in terms of your representation. And they're just making sure the record is clear. I'm trying to get back over to some testimony from Kevin. So let's go back to page 49, line 21. Now going back to page 16, there are other expenses here, Kevin, that you've paid for. Have you paid for Hunter Biden via loans for his accountants, for example? Yes, I have. How much have you paid for Hunter's accountants? He says, I can't remember. It was a lot. Millions? No. Hundreds of thousands? Not millions. I don't recall. Not millions, though. It felt like millions. And then the other category in the indictment was...
That's funny. He only remembers those expenses that get into the millions.
Yeah, I felt like, sure. I mean, it's like another one, another thing. It's like he bit off a lot more than he can chew. And he's going to want to get something for this, right? I mean, you would imagine like there's going to be a benefit at some point. Whatever that is, we'll see if we can figure it out. But the question to him says, and then the other category that the indictment has identified is media relationships. Can you tell us what you paid for loans? He says, look, counsel, I'm not admitting or denying or making any comment about this indictment. I talked about the accountant, but I can't characterize the indictment. I can't answer these questions, and you understand that. He says, it wasn't my question, though. My question is, did you, via loans, pay for any payments to a media relations company on behalf of Hunter? You did tie it to the indictment because what I will say is yes. Well, the reason I'm using the indictment is because you've provided us with no list of the different payments that you've made out. We sent a scope of the topics. You knew what we were going to be talking about, but you did not come with anything laid out describing what you paid. So that's why we're using the indictment. And if you don't like it, then you can just give us the answers. Now, I would like to turn to Exhibit 2. This is the Delaware plea colloquy between Hunter Biden and the U.S. District Court. So this was from the bad plea deal that went awry, which Hunter should have taken that deal, man. It's going to get much worse for him now, but he's so arrogant.
I agree. It would have put the ball back in the government's court.
Totally. And then he could have made a lot of these same arguments that I've already pled guilty. I'm already immunized from all of the other charges. And now he's got a lot of bravado out there, and the DOJ doesn't like that. So they go back to the colloquy and they get some copies out there. Morris says, look, I'm a transactional attorney. Okay. Happily, I haven't been in court for 25 years. It doesn't mean anything that I haven't been in court other than as a transactional attorney. And his lawyer jumps in and says, and general counsel, don't forget. He says, oh yeah, and general counsel. But many, as you know, a lot of lawyers make deals and they don't go to court. So they go to page 35 of the colloquy. Now, background, this is the plea colloquy with Hunter in Delaware. I'm going to read on the record, he says, the court says, all right. Now, there are references to taxes, this is the court reading, paid by a third party on Mr. Biden's behalf. $955,000 here, $956,000 here, $492,000 in 2016, $197,000, 2019. Says, well, just looking at 2017 and 2018, we got more than $1.9 million there. That's a lot of money. Question to Kevin. Did you pay for Hunter Biden via a loan on any of Hunter's tax debts or taxes that were owed to a different state and federal agency? He says, yeah, I did, yes. And in this plea colloquy, it's almost $1 million times 2. Did you pay those amounts? He says, well, I don't believe so. I think these numbers are right. I'm not sure though, because I believe there were, this is a little sneaky. There was substantial, I believe, $800,000 of penalties and interest that Hunter had to pay at the time. Okay, but that would be the total payment, including the taxes he owed, plus the penalties and interest. But as you said, these could have been penalties and other interest by the IRS. Well, I don't know if that's including these numbers, but I don't want to be difficult. But you paid these amounts on behalf of Hunter. Yeah, look, I think this is about right. I can't say this is exactly right without going back and look at my numbers, but we can proceed. And then the next clause says $492,000 in 2016, $197,000 in 2019. Does that sound right? He says, well, this is written sloppily. I didn't pay anything, and he's using the pay again. I didn't pay anything in 2016. And I believe when we voluntarily add this up in 2021, it was multiple tax years. I can't remember. Do you recall paying $200,000 for 2019? Just to clarify, was this the amount that was paid? He says, yes. Are these the only 4 years of the tax liability you covered? So Jim Jordan says, okay, it's 16, 17, 18, and 19. Is that right? He says, yeah, I think that's right. Did you pay any other years? 15? Morris says, I can check that, Congressman, but I'm just curious if it's only the 4 years, because he also had a tax liability in 15 as well, right? Morris says, yeah, that's what I understand. And the amount of money that you've loaned to Biden, is it all in one vehicle to speak? Is it sort of a tab that you're just adding to? He says, well, there's a number of promissory notes in there. And are you able to give us a little bit more clarity about these notes? Can you help us understand? Oh, I can't really remember. If there's a number of promissory notes over the years, my lawyers and his lawyers, they've been careful to take care about it. I don't know. Maybe some were specifically of tax payments. I'm not sure. Maybe some were for periods of time, that was squared up. And now we're looking at more of the colloquy. Look down, I'll read this for you. 1.5 million was total income, and they're talking about the plea deal. Do you recall making a payment to the IRS for 45 grand? I don't remember. He says, when Hunter decided to voluntarily, to pay when we did, we just asked for the tab. We asked how much. So I'm a little rusty about the numbers. Question for you from Miss Van Dunn. You mentioned earlier that you were an art collector. Did you ever purchase any of Hunter's art? Yeah. How many? Oh, a number of paintings over the last 4 years. And do you remember how much you paid for those? I'm sorry? How much you paid for those? Yes. Is it something you can share with us? Well, it's complicated. Okay. It was a little complicated, but shortly after I first met Hunter, I bought 2 paintings, I believe for $40. And then it's been reported I bought a lot, not a lot, of 11 paintings. Not a lot, but a lot, of 11 paintings. I think that's our time. The hour is up. We can take 10, 15-minute break and then call it. 15-minute break, that would give you time to call Mr. Lowell. Yeah, okay, and they go off the record. Now the minority Democrats say, thank you for appearing today, as we're back on the record. So I guess so. The majority's over.
One question that a member of the audience asked that is relevant is what Morris did to make all this money, and how he can do this. Right. Well, he has been for over 2 decades the lawyers for the creators of South Park, and he gets a cut of every episode that South Park is on Comedy Central. So we're talking tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah,
so
and that's
he made his money off South Park.
And that's going to be basically in perpetuity, right? So every time that they play a South Park episode, this guy gets a cut.
Syndication, yes, sir. And he also represents Matthew McConaughey and a couple of other actors.
So he just got money to burn, and
deals.
He's doing it.
And
he's doing it.
Yep.
Okay, so this was, I think, the majority of this. The rest of this is kind of the minority. And was there any other, anything else that was in your notes that really stood out about that, or is this a good spot to leave it?
I think it's a good spot to leave it.
Okay, so they take a break. They come back. Mr. Morris and the minority's back, and they go through the same thing, right? It's the same shtick. It's everything's above board. Hunter's a nice guy, and he was just doing what he needed to do to help him get back on track. And so we covered some good ground here today, Garrett. Any concluding thoughts? Any remarks on what we saw?
There is so much, and I was going through what I wrote down on it. I think the value add from our perspective, what Marco Polo can provide, that they're not going to get from bigger publications that write articles on this transcript, is the inclusion of Lindsay Weinberg, the background of Stuart Liner, the other attorney in the room beside Sullivan, and to know that Hunter Biden's being represented by Sullivan, who is there on Kevin Morris's behalf. You know, what we did with the indictment, and you saw this, I sent it to you, is we crossed out the people's monikers. So like you mentioned, the moniker from Kevin was personal friend. We went through and crossed that out and wrote P. Kevin Morris. And I think this transcript needs a little bit about that. If we could get the cheat sheet from the Berges transcript and then write in Lindsay Weinberg whenever they mention my accountant. Today we learned that Lindsay Weinberg is responsible for this entire thing. He's responsible for Hunter Biden's art career with Berges. So people should be starting to look into Lindsay Weinberg now, because he just testified that it was Weinberg who connected Lynette Phillips and Hunter and Kevin Morris and got Kevin Morris to go over to Hunter's house. So there's a lot of press on Morris. There's a lot of press on Lynette Phillips. There's a hell of a lot of press on Hunter. I think there needs to be a lot of press on Lindsay Weinberg, and I think that's something that Marco Polo can contribute. This is a saga. This is a long-running saga that I'm proud to be a part of. And again, this only is relevant because of Joe. And our only focus is Joe. And you can be sure that if Joe wasn't Joe, Hunter wouldn't be getting these loans and he wouldn't be getting those art prices, period.
Right. And he's been getting a lot of benefits in general against being prosecuted for all of his, tax crimes, gun crimes, prostitution crimes, trafficking crimes, FAR crimes. You documented a ton of those in your report on the Biden laptop at MarcoPoloUSA.org, which was amazing.
$1,000 bounty for any material correction. $1,000
find in that report.
Because Lord knows I can't say I always get it right. I'm a sinner just like the rest, the next guy. So if there is a correction, if there's something false that I've said about Kevin Morris today, I want to hear about it. And, and Hunter Biden, we have no interest in beating somebody down. What's beating Hunter down is the truth. The truth of his own actions makes him feel bad. Nobody's doing this to Hunter. Morris just wants to make him out like this 13-year-old kid, like we're beating up on a teenager. This guy turns 54 in 1 week.
I know.
Hunter Biden turns 54 years old on February 4th. So this is not a kid. He's not just a hapless addict. It's a criminal. And even the U.S. government, as corrupt as it is, understands this. So I hope to stay in the conversation. The more these transcripts go out, we don't cover everything in Marco Polo. We just cover very few topics very deeply. So we're going to go into Weinberg. We're probably going to do a couple threads on him. We've already done a thread on Berges. We're going to do a thread on Stuart Liner, and we'll keep you guys abreast. I love this audience.
We have the greatest audience ever, and we're extremely grateful for you, Garrett. I want to make sure we ask about, you know, first of all, how people can support you. You know, I know you've got this litigation going on. You've said you've got $200,000 in legal fees that you guys have come out of pocket on. So
Yes.
what is the best thing that people can do? What's the next step, you know, steps in this case, or where's the status at? How can people support you as this continues on?
So our next hearing with Hunter, because remember, we're not just being sued by Morris, we're being sued by Hunter himself. And that's in March with Hernan Vera, a judge in the Central District. We got sued in the very district that Hunter was criminally indicted in. Think about that. It's absolutely pathetic and hilarious. So we're getting sued by Hunter. We're getting sued by Morris. We didn't get to that part of the transcript, but Morris calls us creeps. That's what he calls good investigators. He calls good investigators creeps because in his world, you know, like I said at the start, it's a novel take. He's just going to say that exposing corruption's a creepy thing, and he's expecting people to find it or to buy it. So we're going to be tracking this like a hound dog on blood, and everybody can follow us. Our social media handles are all the same across all the platforms. It's just Marco Polo 501c3. Our site is marcopolo501c3.org. And then our legal defense fund is very simple, very easy to remember. Fightbiden.org. Fightbiden.org. It's all there. The commenter just said Weinberger. No, Weinberg. Lindsay Weinberg. And you know, we have a small dossier on him. I might post it on my Telegram channel. We're on Telegram a lot. I love that platform. I don't want to belabor the point, but you know, it's a war of attrition against us. They're just trying to drown us out, and we got to be. Yeah, you see, creeps. Again, I've never attacked this family. Never been around these people in person, man. Like, all I've said is that it's a degenerate family, which is objectively true. I've never even been around these people in person. It's insane. He's the one smoking a bong on a porch, and he's calling me the degenerate creep.
It's such an honor. It's such a badge of honor. So just to make sure that we can memorialize this into this live stream, here is what the transcript says. Sullivan was asking a question. We're not going to get any information about the documentary because of that's being prepared in anticipation of litigation in the course of his representation of Hunter. And so Morris responded. He says, you know, look, counsel, anytime anybody's name is brought up in anything, these creeps like Ziegler, like Garrett, they attack them. They attack their families, and they attack. And you know, obviously, that's all.
Do you know what our attacks consisted of, Robert?
Nonsense.
For the record, all we did was name them. We figured out through facial recognition who was involved in the documentary, and we just did a thread on them. So it's a novel concept. Think about this in the future. Somebody gets exposed, they'll just call it harassment. Right. He sued me for harassment. Somebody's writing an article about me. That's harassment. It's so pathetic. I feel like I'm like describing the plot of a dream. Remember, the guy who's talking here, Morris, is 60 years old. He's 60. Have you ever seen 60-year-olds act like this? He's an arrogant, entitled SOB. He's lived in Hollywood too long. Yeah. Nobody's messed with him. Nobody's asked him. Get this. He just said to the Congress that he directs things. He's the general counsel, you know? So what I'm trying to say is he never has any pushback in any area of his life ever. And when he gets it, I mean, his wife left him over this. His wife, who works at the William Morris Agency, they're estranged over this. So that's what happens when anybody provides any pushback or questioning. And again, no interest in defaming Mr. Morris. I don't want to say anything that's false. It's true that he controls the Chi-Com investment fund, 10% of it now. It's true that he has given all this money and has never done so before. And it's true that he never bought a painting from Georges Bergès before, you know, Hunter Biden was a client of Georges Bergès. So this is sociologically rich, man. Everything's there. If you're following this at home, this story's got everything. It's got drugs. It's got sex. It's got the international scene. It's rich.
On that BHR thing, that 10% stake, do we have any idea what that valuation is worth?
That's a very good question. God, you're good. So there's only been one person who has credentials that has valued this. and his name is Professor Kaplan at the University of Chicago. It's a footnote in our report, and he gave a quote to factcheck.org in 2019, and he said that the 10% share based on the assets under management is anywhere between $6 to $20 million, and that was in 2019. Okay. So the assets under management has gone up. So, and Kaplan's not a right-wing guy like me. I'm not a Republican, but I'm definitely a right-wing. So somebody needs to reach out to Kaplan and say, hey, what are the new numbers? If you did this in 2019 during impeachment scam 1 and the assets under management's gone up 30%, what's a 10% share worth? So let's say Morris gives Hunter $7 million in liquid cash, but holds 10% of the Chi-Com fund that's worth $15 million. Then he's making money. That ROI is 100% in the vesting period's like only 6 years. So who knows? Morris may make money out of this.
Right. And he's feeling pretty strong right now. You know, he's got Hunter.
Yes, and the reason, and for anybody at home who's wondering, well, why didn't Hunter cash out? That's a political liability. Didn't you see the exhibit from Morris to the accountant? This is politically risky for us. So if Hunter cashes out the 10% from BHR now, that's going to be the headlines. President's son cashes out he gets the payoff. So Morris gets the payoff. Hunter gets the liquid cash now.
Yep. Yeah, Hunter can't exit with his 10%, so he's got to divvy that to someone else. That is basically, you know, it's laundering Morris, you know, that money through Morris back into his coffers.
This came up in the child support litigation. You essentially got, because the mother is not a sociopath and hates litigation, as most normal humans do. I hate litigation.
Right.
Morris essentially negotiated less money to a 4-year-old from his own pocket, because that means he'd have to loan Hunter less money. That's how disgusting these people are. So Hunter's lifestyle hasn't changed at all. He's still living in the Hollywood Hills, but Morris has to pay a 4-year-old less now through loans. What a joke.
It's a joke. Do you have time for a couple questions? A couple people sent in some interesting questions.
I'd love to. A couple of these comments are like, I'm ruining your flow. So I don't want to ruin your flow, man.
No, me?
A couple of these comments are like, he's ruining Robert's flow. So that's why I was I was a little bit more guarded in my comments on the second half of the show.
Oh no, man. Look, I love having you. I love your thoughts. You know, I am only reading the transcript, so I'm grateful for you to, you know, jump in with your wisdom and your knowledge. But this was a question that came in, I think the last time you were on here, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. This came in from Pinochet's Helicopter Tours.
I love that.
Says, if you have a chance, can you ask Garrett if he foresees feds coming after anyone who bought a physical copy of your report, because I want to get one and show everyone I know. Have you thought much about that? Any reaction to that?
Of course I've thought about it. They won't go after them. They'll go after me. In fact, I just got a visit from a Secret Service agent last week.
Did you?
Yeah, of course. Completely ridiculous. All we did was send out a report to a law enforcement official and their families, and then they have to visit us. Of course, I didn't do anything wrong. We didn't break the law. We sent a copy of our report to someone. It's still legal in the United States to send mail to someone. But of course, I mean, it's just trying to spook us. Nothing can spook me, but they're trying to spook my family now. So no, they won't go after anybody who bought who bought a report or who supported us. They're going to go after me, and they've already done that. Somebody's left a dead cat on my parents' porch. The Secret Service has has already contacted me and my mother twice. Joe's direct bodyguards have. So I mean, this is Stasi level stuff. And again, we didn't do anything wrong. There's no violation of law here. It's their visits are just to make sure that I know that they're monitoring me. That's how corrupt it is.
Yeah, and I've got my copy. You know, I think that.
Oh yeah, and if it makes people feel any better, Robert, 12,000. We've given 12,000 have been shipped, man, through just word of mouth. We can't even get on Amazon. We can't even get our listing on Amazon.
12,000 people, right? If they're coming after Garrett, you know, maybe they're going to come after all of us. I'll tell you this: there's a lot of spice in this, but it's also censored. Like you covered it up.
It's conservative. All we do is talk about the primary source evidence. Look, there's an email. We put the screenshot of the email and explain what the email is, and we provide the when, where, who, what. There's no editorializing. It's not salacious. We're not salacious. The content is salacious.
The content is. But you even go through great lengths to kind of cover up the genitals and, you know, some of the other things in there.
One of the things we're being sued for in California by Hunter is deceptive business practice. You know what the deceptive business practice is? Covering up his genitals.
Oh.
They said that is changing his data. And we'll have to get into an argument that no pixels in the image were changed. We just put a black box over your client's penis.
Right.
2 quick questions that I see from the chat. Do we have an ISBN? Yes, that's in the front cover. You can look at that on the e-reader. Did your mom bake them chocolate chip cookies? No, she said that she doesn't want to talk to him, which is what you always say. You always get somebody like Robert. Never talk to a federal agent alone.
Never.
Like it's on a 1001 charge. That's bullshit.
Never.
You can talk to federal agents if you have an attorney with you. Now, I prefer never to talk to him. I wouldn't even talk. I wouldn't even allowed to be I would not subject myself to feds, even if I were criminally indicted, because I respect them that little. So, but most people are spooked. Most people, if somebody comes to the door, they're like, sure, we can talk. No, you don't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah, that's rule number one is I don't answer those questions. I don't answer those questions. Just say that, get a lawyer on the phone. They'll take it from there. So, okay. So that's a great answer. And also, you know, I think this is like a big news article, like really, like if you wanted to analogize it, it's like a giant news article that the New York Times would write. Just, you know, it's very juicy, very detailed, so it's newsworthy, in other words, which I think protects it.
Yeah, 2,000 footnotes.
Yeah, it's footnotes. It's just an article. And it's also something, you know, a lot of the same content like Marjorie Taylor Greene was putting pictures up right in front of Congress and stuff like that. So I think it's part of the public discourse now. And I've got my copy.
I have to defend MTG, Robert, because they said that she posted or she showed nude photos of Hunter. No genitalia of Hunter Biden has been aired at a congressional hearing. It's a total fake news. What they did was they showed redacted images of Hunter Biden engaging in sexual conduct with hookers, but they did not show genitalia. That matters from a legal perspective. And for Abby Lowell to go up and continuously lie and say that and they said it about us, that Marco Polo has never posted a nude photo of Hunter Biden. We have always covered the genitalia. Just like our site, that people may not know about BidenLaptopMedia.com or BidenLaptopEmails.com. Those are 2 free sites. You can go and download all the photos and all the emails from the device for free.
Right. You've been doing great work on this. It's very accessible. Like you said, there's 12,000 people who got it. You know, if we're all going to end up in the gulags together, it's going to be a great.
Yeah. And if for some reason somebody's spooked, just go download the PDF to your computer and or just view it on the e-reader. We have it in 3 different formats. It's accessible as heck. Anybody, even if you're on a mountain in Nairobi, you can access this report.
It's very important this stuff gets out, man. Garrett, I was thinking about you in this next election, and my first question for you was, and you know, you don't have to answer this directly if you don't want to, but have you had any interface with Congress and these people like the Oversight Committee, Ways and Means, Judiciary? Like, are they leaning on you as a resource in any way?
The first answer is yes, I have spoken with them. I speak with them a lot. Leaning on me would be a weird description because it's me righteously annoying the hell out of them.
Okay.
And it's mostly staff. I like Senator Ron Johnson personally and professionally. I think Ron Johnson, in my opinion, should be a serious VP candidate. He was good on the branch committee and stuff. He's been awesome on the Biden Inc. I like him, but most of it's staff. Most of the people I talk to are staff, and that's every day. So before they take transcripts, before they ask these testimonies, I'm peppering them with, you need to ask this, you need to ask this,
awesome.
You need to ask this. So, and that's my job. We can't lobby. All I can do is serve it up on a silver platter. This report, the motive for it was so that they had it was a quick learner, that it sped up the learning curve.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, you got a massive dossier of very valuable information, and I would be irritated if they weren't using that to their full advantage. So that was my number one. But my next thought, man, was for this election, we need to get you out, in front of as many people as possible to talk about this. And I mean that genuinely. Like I'm thinking about this. I'm envisioning, a Tucker Carlson appearance going through this. I'm envisioning a Joe Rogan appearance going through this.
Really trying to get on Rogan.
That would be so.
I've gone through 15 states. We have 35 left. I'm planning on doing 35 this year.
Man.
To go to all 50. We want to go to all 50. And, obviously we're a C3, so we can't do anything with Trump formally. In my own personal capacity, the choice couldn't be clear. Foreign compromise or America first. But the good thing about the report is it's just his own material. It's just what's on his own laptop. If they have a problem with it, if they're mad at the exposure of it, you shouldn't have put this stuff on your laptop, period.
Right. Okay. A couple other questions. And
Yes.
first, I'd really love to see that happen because I think, this is go time. I love that you've got good energy, at your sales. We've got really good energy here. We've got all the Trump litigation going on that we're going to be defending and, defending him in the court of public opinion. But
I subscribe to you on YouTube. You're like one of my 4 subscriptions, man. Every time I see a red dot, I like it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
you know who
that.
I also love, and I saw that you were going through his tweet threads. I love Matthew Russell Lee at Inner City Press.
Oh my gosh, he's great.
You too are 50% of my YouTube subscriptions.
He's great, man. He does
the best
him. Reporting there.
He's on the ground. I like it a lot.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, shout out to Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee. He's at Inner City Press on X.
Yeah, and he's an attorney like you. Do you know that?
Yeah, I did know that. Yeah, and he's been reporting from the Southern District of New York. I think we covered. He did the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. He did a bunch of good stuff.
He, like me, I piss off people on both sides. He does too. People can't peg him. He has the good fortune of pissing off both sides.
Right. Have you thought about YouTube, man? Are you thinking about starting? Do you have a channel? Right?
I gotta get. When I was there at your place, I saw how kick-ass the setup is. I've got to get a better setup to where I have a Nikon going, and I'm like you. I got to have exhibits, so hopefully I can have the setup to where I'm talking about. I'm only so engaging if it's just me. I've got to explain, especially pictures. Like what I'm going to do is after this tonight, I'll post some pictures of Lindsay Weinberg, and that'll hopefully start soaking into people's brainstem. Once I see somebody's face, I do not forget them, but it takes me a while. If I don't have a picture of them, it takes me a while to remember all their attributes. But I mean, with this dossier, that's essentially what it was. It was about memorizing about 450 people.
Right.
That was essentially what the job was. And that's what I had to do. So you just have to memorize faces. And the whole goal, again, is the unabashed truth. This stuff is nuts. The stuff with Joey and the Chi-Coms. Remember, he said this to everybody. My son did not make money in terms of this thing with China. It was a total lie. Right. And he did it without stopping. He lied so easily that
when it was most important, right during the election.
Yeah. He never even thought about it. Like it was just automatic lie.
Yep.
And we have the indictment even from like neoconservative establishment Republicans that this guy's taking $4 million from the Chi-Coms. And these aren't legitimate businesses. They're not even building a building. At least the mafia sold some pizzas to someone.
Right.
At least people were getting a good cheese pizza with their mafia involvement. The Bidens aren't even producing anything. They're not creating anything. There's nothing to show for the $4 million from the Chi-Coms. And one of these Republicans they got to get that in the transcript. I want to state for the record that at least the mafia had some pizza made. I'm not saying that the Trump enterprise hasn't made heirs before and its 50-year existence, but guess what? There's a freaking building in the sky because of it.
You're right. Okay, here's a question for you. This
Yes.
is from Quarter Native on Locals. Hey, Garrett, is there any chance, capitalized, that Robbie Kaplan, the lawyer for E. Jean Carroll, and Lewis Kaplan, the judge in the Southern District of New York, are related? Has anyone looked into it? And I thought the answer is no. That's what I've seen reported.
We have a couple genealogists working with us. I will get on that immediately. That's a great question. But yeah, Robbie Kaplan's in our dossier. She's in the Ashley section. Isn't it nuts that Kaplan represents E. Jean Carroll and Ashley Biden? That's a very good question. Lewis Kaplan and Robbie Kaplan. If not, that should be immediate recusal on the judge. Immediate.
There's weird stuff going on there. I think one of the other lawyers for E. Jean Carroll was Judge Kaplan's law clerk or something like that. Like, very weird stuff.
Have you got a show on that? I don't think you have. That's nuts. And yes, I know Kaplan is a very common Jewish surname. I understand that. But it might be the case. I mean, I'm sure they're both from New York.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the background is, but it's very interesting. And even if they're not related, it's like, don't you have an affinity for someone who still has your same last name? You know, it's kind of a weird thing.
Well, they tried to say that about me and Joe Ziegler. I think the stronger case is that they probably ran in the same legal circles. They're both Democrats from Manhattan.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, you're going to be able to find a picture of them chumming at an event, at some bar event. That would be a hell of a find, though. That was like us going through Roman's pleadings, finding those White House invoice lines. That was nuts. We didn't even have any secret sauce for that. I was just the one to say, holy shit, Wade billed Fulton County for meeting with Joe's people. I mean,
Crazy.
If you were going to do that, why the hell would you even bill it? Just keep it off the books.
Because you want to get paid.
$250 an hour.
Got to get paid, man. Got to get that money.
Disgusting.
Yeah, and there was another $1 million over there. Okay, here's one from Sherry. Sherry says on Local, Sherry says, geez, I love you guys who dig out the truth. Also, when Hunter did that trick of giving a painting to his stripper kid each year, it's just a way to get the buyer to pay his child support. He should have to pay tax for the pass-through. That's from Sherry says.
That's an interesting thought. I think that for the kid's sake, they should want to sell the paintings ASAP, because if Joey leaves, the prices are going to go down. This is not going to be like Jacques Louis David, increasing in value as time goes on. I really don't think so. Apparently, Robbie Kaplan is a lesbian. She said is gay, though. It still doesn't change her familial connection. So, yes, she may not have blood heirs, but she could have cousins, right? Because obviously her parents weren't homosexuals. But again, Kaplan, for most people, their sexual orientation doesn't matter professionally. But for Kaplan, it is important, because Kaplan was the attorney who in 2014 represented the plaintiff for the gay marriage case. So that commenter does have a point in that she's present at pretty much every left-wing junction. Like there's and again, Ashley Biden, if she has a $5,100 tax lien from the city of Philadelphia from 2015, how is she paying Roberta Kaplan's fees, which are probably $1,800? Who's paying Ashley Biden's lawyer's fees? I would love to know that question. They should call in Roberta Kaplan and see who's paying the bills.
Well, Roberta Kaplan, I think that's being funded by Reid Hoffman.
Yes, for E. Jean Carroll.
For E. Jean Carroll.
But Ashley Biden's representation. What if Reid Hoffman is not only paying for E. Jean Carroll, but also Ashley Biden? That would be something. Because yeah.
I was going to say, maybe she has a sugar daddy like Kevin Morris does, and we just don't know who that person is.
That's a good, I don't know how I'll get that answer, man, but just like they're so steaming mad about the JP Morgan SARS that we got, that maybe somebody within that firm will leak something to me. They're so mad about that. Lowell is like a hornet up a woman's skirt about those SARS. Anybody can go to BidenSARS.com and view 5 confirmed suspicious activity reports about Hunter Biden. They show sex trafficking, money laundering, and everything else. And when you go there, Abby Lowell sheds a tear. Just like that, what's that Christmas saying, that movie? Every time an angel angel grows its... Remember the Christmas Story?
Yeah, something like that.
It's something
Yeah.
like an angel spreads its wings or something. Well, I'm going to create one. Every time you go to no, a SARS is a suspicious activity report. Somebody asks, Hunter Biden contracted SARS. No, he probably contracted other things, and he did tell his sister-in-law to go get tested for HIV. But SARS are things that banks create to send to the federal government. Every time you view a SAR, Abby Lowell sheds a tear. Okay. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Yes. Well, 3 women came up with that. So every time you view a SAR on Marco Polo 501c3.org, Abby Lowell sheds a tear.
That's
And
right.
that
Go check them out.
motivates me.
I'm going to look at 20 of them tonight. I'm just going to
Yes.
just refresh it.
They're nuts. Remember, this is from J.P. Morgan. This is
Yeah.
from Garrett Ziegler. This is not from somebody who's, it's just a right-wing nut job. This is J.P. Morgan Chase. Largest largest bank in the nation by assets. Over $1 trillion. So if you have I told Abby Lowe, if you have a problem with, I said this in a deposition, if you have a problem with it, take it up with J.P. Morgan Chase, my friend.
Great stuff, Garrett. So, man, we could talk all day. I know we've been going for a while. So why don't we wrap it up? And we had to thank you for taking the time to answer some of those questions.
It was great. That was great. I appreciate this. This is fun.
Super fun, man. You have such great knowledge, and I'm very grateful that you're on our side. I know I tell you that every time, but I think that you're going to be, your work, the Marco Polo work, your team, your crew.
We want to collaborate as much as possible, dude. You're doing things that we literally can't do. So that's why I want to get on this show so much, is that you fill out, like, I like posting these because our viewers learn stuff from you too. It's not just to look and to watch me. So the more, and again, I'm pretty conservative. I don't know a topic. I don't want to come on the program, right? So I haven't followed the Trump trials like you have. So therefore I don't butt in and say, hey, I got a value add here. But on this Biden stuff, that's where I Marco Polo's website again, very, very last thing. Marco Polo 501c3.org.
Yeah, you are the authority, man, on this. And we're always grateful to have you, because it's kind of the opposite. We're going very deep from the defense perspective on the Trump trials. And we've been covering the Hunter stuff too. It's very, very good, but not.
That's
not
how
like
I learned
you,
of you. You covered the subpoena that came after the SARS. That's how that's the first episode I watched of yours. And then I got addicted. And I told my friend Alicia, hey, you've got to connect with this guy. He's out in Arizona. So again,
shout out to Alicia.
And I've sent when you cover something in depth like that, because nobody's doing it, I send it to people, especially if their stuff is the subject of what you're going through.
Yeah. Well, my friend, we're going to keep grinding away. We've got a full election ahead, and we got some work to do. We got to save our country and expose all this.
This country's gorgeous. We have to keep going. Last question. Is Marco Polo Garrett Ziegler? No, it is not a nom de plume. Marco Polo is the name of a group. It's the name of a nonprofit. I'm just one of many. I'm the public face of it, but Lord knows I couldn't have put the report together alone. So I'm just one of a larger group.
Amazing. Okay, so Garrett, thank you, my friend. Really, really appreciate you being here. And we're going to make sure everybody follows you, MarcoPoloUSA.org. We got the link down in the description below. Grab your copy of the Hunter Biden, the report on the Biden laptop. You know where to get it. Garrett, thanks again, my friend. We'll have you back very soon. All right. Bye-bye. Okay, my friend. So that is Garrett Ziegler. Oh my gosh, what a great conversation. Just a wealth of knowledge. We literally can talk for days about all of this stuff. And you know what? We probably will. We're going to definitely have him back, because the Hunter Biden saga is just continuing to expand. We know that Hunter has kind of haphazardly agreed to a second deposition. He snubbed Congress the first time, but he's going to go back in and at some point apparently sit down for another deposition. And so we're going to keep covering this, and Garrett's going to be out there exposing all of this for all of America to see. And we want to support that, help them and the Marco Polo team continue to shine that spotlight down across America. And so grab your book, Report on the Biden Laptop. I got 2 of them. Okay, that's how much I like it. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. And it was a burner of a show. We covered some very good ground. We got Kevin Morris and his depot in the can. We got Georges Bergès and his depot in the can. And all thanks to Garrett Ziegler in the house. But now, my friends, let us hear from you. We had a couple very nice super chats come in. And so we are, as soon as we're done here, going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And so come and check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where we're going to be. We do members only streams in the morning. We do Saturday shows. This morning we talked about, I can't even remember. I got Biden on the brain, but we talked about a lot of good stuff this morning and it was fun. So watchingthewatchers.locals.com is going to be the place to go. And also, I think I see that we've got a headline here that Trump wins in New Hampshire. Now, here is what the AP says, and this is quite early. This is before, I think the polls are even closed, as far as I know. Maybe they're not. Well, it's 6:30, so maybe they're closed. But here it is. Live, Trump wins New Hampshire decisively. And here's the headline. What is going on? Why are these websites so bad like this? Go away. Here is the story. Donald Trump wins the primary, a commanding victory that would make a November rematch with Joe look more likely than ever. Trump's at 52%, Nikki's at 46% on this, and they called it already. So it's done. An open and shut case. Ron only got 442 votes. He dropped out, obviously. And so those votes have now split. Trump 52 to 46. Big victory and a pretty quick one as we expected. So very good news there. And we're excited to see that. Now, who is joining us on this day? We got Steve Lee's in the house. What's up, Steve? Been a member for 8 months in the house. And shout out to Vienticus. Thank you for clipping away for us on the day. You can see Steve Lee been a member for 8 months. We also had some comments come in. Let's see where this one went. Hey, CF Rob says, stop the illegal invasion. Stop the dang illegal invasion. Says just last year, a federal judge declared Obama-Biden's DACA program is illegal. The AP reported on it and the mainstream media picked it up. September 2023 from CF Rob. Talking about some immigration stuff there. Very nicely done. Hey, Darkside Digital. What's up, Darkside? Thanks for being a membo. Says, afternoon, Rob, and all of the watchers out there. As always, a great show for today. What's your take on the first U.S. District Court of Appeals court allowing Mexico to sue gun makers for firearms manufacturers? Wow. I'll leave the link on X. So, Darkside, thank you for the nice dono today, my friend. I do like seeing you on X. I'm not familiar with it. I'll have to take a look at it. My gut instinct is I don't really like that idea. You know, I don't like foreign governments suing local companies. I think the United States maybe should defend those companies, but I'll take a look at the details. Good to see you, Darkside. We got Pinochet. We got that question. Thanks for asking that, Pinochet. Thought that was a good answer from Garrett. We got Liquid Rock is here for 2 months. What's up, Liquid Rock Aquatics? Has been a membo for 2 months, and we know what that is. 2/9 of a baby. 2/9 of a baby. Good to see you, Liquid Rock. CF Rob says, does Trump have an appeal going with the Diddley the Purse E. Jean Carroll case? The lawfare Democrats want to declare Trump guilty and then use that up the line to other cases to say Trump is guilty. So the E. Jean Carroll case has, yes, it has been appealed. I think the first one is under appeal, I believe, but I do not know what the status of that is. Bob Dole's in the house. What's up, Bob? Bringing in Cindy DeTore. We got old drill sergeants here. CGI Joe's in the house. Perry Rush is here. And Lance Uppercut, all coming in courtesy of Bob Dole. In fact, there were even more of those there. 10 membos from Bob Dole. And so everyone else who joined in, welcome aboard. And thanks, Bob, for bringing in 10 new membos. Darkside, hey, 9 months. We got a baby in the house. What's up, Darkside? Says, oh, hey, look at what I made. A watcher baby already. 9 months fly by in the blink of an eye, don't they, my friends? Congratulations, Darkside. We're happy to have our newest baby. CF Rob says, they bankrupted General Flynn. They're trying to bankrupt the J6 political prisoners. That's why many of them took a plea. They can't afford to fight the United States government in court. No, of course not. Hiring lawyers and fighting this case going to trial? It's tens of thousands of dollars. They can't fight that. Blind Lawyer explains, says, why not do anti-slap on the Hunter Biden gallery case? And I think Garrett's, some of his team has actually done that. And that's a strategic lawsuit against public participation. We talked about that at some point, I think with Garrett when he was here physically. Good to see you, the Blind Lawyer. Hey, betrayed by corrupt scumbags, has been a member for 14 months. And it's true, we've all been betrayed. Saying Hunter art is a disguise for money laundering. Great comment. And that's almost at 2 babies. We got Knox. Knox is in the house sharing a very nice rainbow, a double rainbow it looks like. Ooh, that's a good one. We love a good rainbow here. Quarter Native, we got that one asked about the relationship. He said he's going to look into that with his, what do you say, a genealogist? Amazing. We've got Mark Owens. What's up, Mark? Thank you for the nice dono, Mark. Very much appreciate that one. And you also became a supporter, and I'm grateful for that as well. Good to see you, Mark. Welcome aboard. Hey, nobody, you said, I heard that SCOTUS accepted the amicus brief from Ed Meese, and the court has ordered the attorneys to be prepared to answer questions about this. I think this is big. So I haven't seen that yet from the court. I did see that the Edwin Meese filing has been submitted. And actually, you know who joined the one at SCOTUS? Bill Barr. Bill Barr is joining Ed Meese. Bill Barr even thinks Trump should be on the Colorado ballots. It's a good one. Super Buff Shaft is here. Says, here's more proof the GOP helped rig elections. Here's an audio recording that I have not listened to yet, but I heard this. Apparently, a senior Republican figure in Arizona was trying to bribe Kari Lake to not run, which wouldn't surprise me at all. Quarter Native says, Garrett saying Vox is TP is being generous. They're more like TP for the TP. LOL. Yeah, that's bad. Waldo is bringing in 5 new members. Karen O, Pablo Concepcion, Richard Tatership is here, Aubin A is here, and Eagle 80 in the house, all courtesy of our friend Waldo. Thank you, Waldo, for the 5 newest members. NY says, okay, so look, if I'm taken out, I'm not suicidal, all right? I worked within the Malibu circle of Morris. Ooh. It's not only his money he's gifting to Hunter, it's a consortium of bad people that benefit from Biden in office. Trust me. From NY. Lady Ice says, so Miss Phillips out of the blue buys a painting, first purchased through this guy. Then Hunter takes him to meet Mr. Morris, who then buys for the first time from this guy, both of whom Hunter already knows, but he has no idea they're buying his work. Be curious. Sandy says, a huge admission today from Kirby. The Texas National Guard about the invasion declaration orders are legally operating. It means Biden violates Article 4 of the Constitution that prohibits the country from being invaded. How to send you a link to the presser. Last question of Kirby, 3247 mark on YouTube. Sandy, you don't need to send me that. Thank you for the offer, though. It's extremely nice of you to even offer that. But I'll find it for sure. I'll find John Kirby. In fact, during our members only stream in the morning, we'll probably play it tomorrow. We'll see if it's relevant for the show. But Sandy, thanks for that. Very nice dono and a great suggestion. Spud says, Hunter most likely had a spoon up his nose rather in the road. Definitely had something up his nose, a spoon or something. Lady Ice says, this guy's a train wreck. They did not go through the script with him ahead of this, and probably talking about Georges. And is it just me, or does this always seem like they make these names up to out on their little show? Miss Phillips, Mr. Morris, and so many other names that are just too oddly coincidental. You mean like Jack Smith? Might as well call him John Doe. Knox says, this Morris guy must have done so much blow. He's like 2 years younger than me, and he looks like he's 10 years older. He does. He looks rough, actually. He's put a lot of mileage on that body of his. Rocky says, I heard Spartz isn't going to run for another term, so she's out after 2024. Wow. How come? Cheers to you, Representative Spartz. Thanks for the efforts. May you be suitably replaced. I liked her. I wonder why she's out. Lady Ice says, maybe the price depends on which drugs he was on when he painted them, or maybe he sometimes uses the drugs in the painting. Kind of like a scratch and sniff when you need a little extra zip. Maybe he put some cocaine in there too. Says, and the whole complete irony that he is literally using a straw and blowing to create these masterpieces, like they're thumbing their noses at us when they come up with these ideas. I mean, this is totally an idea what one would come up with while very high. Yeah, maybe he's like, like they throw paint on a canvas. Maybe he's like throwing cocaine and like methamphetamine on a canvas. He's throwing some crack rocks on there. See how they stick. Okay. Cindy DeTore says, Rob, I tain't joking. These liars make me ill. A membo for 5 months, Cindy. Thanks for being a membo for 5 months. And I tain't joking either. NY says, Morris's attorney-client BS is a clever scheme to cloak the same pay-for-play stuff that Hunter used to do. Morris is now acting as Hunter and Joe's agent and simply giving to Hunter now. Sounds about right. This is the Carrie Lake and the DeWitt audio. No, Tara, I have not listened to that yet, but I know it's going hog wild right now. This one from Seawolf says, Rob, check out the case of this J6er that was released. Why was he released when other J6ers are still in jail for less? Good question. I don't know who you're talking about there, but Ray Epps comes to mind. Probably because there's two standards of justice. Sherry says, hey, we got this one. Talking about paying his child support. Garrett got that one. Thank you, Sherry says. Quarter Native says, my husband is a published artist. He did the art for major corporations, and he said the prices Hunter is getting is absolutely pay for play. Happens all the time in the art world. Perfect. And I happen to know artists too, okay, who are pretty damn talented, and they're not getting $50,000 for their pieces like Hunter is, who just joined Art World like two years ago. Quarter Native says, when we're in the gulag together, I'll provide the medical care. Who's covering entertainment? LOL. Well, I'll do the show. I can do a live show. It won't be a live stream because I don't think we have streaming technology in the gulags, but I'll still do it. We'll get a red Sharpie and I'll just post stuff on the walls, and I'll just take a red Sharpie to the walls. These communists who have us in the gulags, let me show you what they've done to us today during our dinner time, whatever it is, We'll make it work. I'm not worried. Spud says, Joey and the Chi-Coms sounds like a doo-wop group. Well, that would be better for the country. Riley Leafson says, as a former addict, Joey is Hunty's enabler-in-chief. Right, for his own son that he loves. He's like pimping his son out to go get money for the family. Rocky says, since we're talking the same names, how about Matthew Russell Lee, who reports for Inner City Press, and AP White House correspondent Matt Lee, usually covers the Department of State. Both seem cool. It is interesting. That is interesting. I don't know Matt Lee from AP's work, but I definitely know Matthew Russell Lee. Good connection there, Rocky. Lady Ice says, the thing about these people is that they are just like the bad guys in Scooby-Doo. They have to tell you what they're doing. They take secret pleasure in putting it out there in our face, like the fact that the straw that he used to blow the paintings off, right? He's blowing his paintings. They get off on it. Yeah, it's like we have power. We know we have power. We're doing things to consolidate our power, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that is the most powerful thing of all. And that's what they're exploiting. We got Flash River in the house. Says, Rob, the presidential primary from New Hampshire, stats are coming in if you're interested. And it looks like Trump is winning away. Sandy says, Garrett has so much info and probably an eidetic memory. It's hard to absorb all that he has to say. Yes. The answer is yes. He has so much knowledge packed in that brain of his. It's actually kind of impressive. It is impressive, not kind of. It's impressive to watch him process it as we're going through all of this in real time. He's an expert on the subject. It's really great. Lenny Malley, 10 months. That's a baby in a month. Says, love you all. God bless you all. And keep the faith. Keep the faith. Shout out, Lenny. Thanks for being a member for 10 months. And Sherry says, Rob, can you break down the reasons the Supreme Court sided with Biden against Texas? I don't think so. I don't think anybody can. I don't think we know. So this morning on the Membos Only stream, Sherry, if you missed that, we pulled up the actual order. It's like a paragraph. There's like nothing even in there. They just, if I had to guess, there was no real details on it. I would guess that it's probably, first of all, the border is the federal government's purview, like legally. So it's hard to overcome that. Now, you might disagree with that, like when our federal government causes the invasion. That's kind of not what's supposed to happen. The government is supposed to protect the border. So when they're failing the border, we have no recourse for that. So I don't know what happened. I think maybe Amy Coney Barrett and Judge Roberts, who are a little bit more moderate on those issues, went that way. I don't know. All right, so that's from Sherry. Hey, what's up, Stefan Evans? Thank you, Stefan E, sending this one in. Thanks for the dono. No question on that, or Steven, thank you. Either way, I appreciate you. And we got Lady Ice in the house. Says, OMG, Robbie Kaplan's spouse is none other than our favorite woman of the year, Admiral Lavin. I'm not sure who that is, from Lady Ice over on the locals. All right, let's say hello to our friend. Thank you for those, my friends. Very generous. I'm grateful that you sent those in on this beautiful day. Let's say hello to our friends on X before we wrap it up and go over to our members only stream, the after party. What else do we got? Hey, Danny says, Danny McWilliams, could buyer A be Nancy or Jill? Good question. Darkside shared this one. So Darkside talking about Mexico being allowed to sue U.S. gun manufacturers. Some other nice comments from Polly. Says 72 grand for an acrylic paint? What in the world was hidden and carefully sealed under the thick removable paint layer? I don't know. Maybe nuclear codes or something. We got a great stream from Toodley. Kayla says, nice one. I haven't seen. George is in the house. Goofy for Jesus is here. Says, not even the Indies and the Dems could help. Trump wins. Maynor says, the Arizona Secretary of State says there's a glitch in the system. And V is never silent says, watching you keeps in factually informed. And shout out to Finance Wolves in the house. Idea Drew says, this has been a fantastic stream today. This is very fascinating information. I'm continually impressed on how thorough the background information presented has been. 1010 would tune in again, from Ida Drew in the house. And my friends, those are the great comments on X. Thank you for sending those on X. If you want to follow us and follow your other watchers out there, check us out at Rob Govea ESQ. Make sure you're following the other watchers out there, liking their stuff, re-Xing their stuff, because that's how we connect and amplify our work. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We'd love to see you there. We also have our website, robertgovea.com, and you can head on over here, click this blue button to sign up for our daily newsletter. That way, all of these show reports that you see here under this tab, they all get bundled up. They all get sent and delivered to your inbox. Everything that you see right here will just conveniently come right into your email. And what's nice about our website is if you want to read any of the PDFs that we talk about, you can certainly do that by going to the website. You see here example is a motion that we covered with Fannie. You can see here it is. It's all uploaded onto our website, and so you can download the documents if you want to follow along while you're watching or do your research. It's all here. And of course, sign up for the newsletter. We also have our shop. Don't forget to grab some gear from the shop. It's a great way to support the show, and it looks great. You're going to feel great, and it's awesome stuff. If you want to learn more about the logo, the Watcher logo, well, of course, you can read all about it right here. What the sword means, what the shield means, what the unbalanced scales of justice mean, what Lady Liberty means and stands for, why we put this logo together, all right here at robertgovea.com, and you can buy a hat. It's a great way to support our work, support the show, and look amazing when you are out there. But my friends, we are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Before we do, want to thank the mods and the meme smiths who help mod down the fort, especially on these long shows. Our friends, Vienticus Prime in the house, clipping away for us. Thank you, V. K-Bean is here. Just Cause, Playing Hooky, our friend Ronnie, Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek, Dog Digger, and of course, Donut Mind Me, modding down the fort for us, our friends Sleepy Dog Lee, Geegum Geegum, and Nathan N810 as our meme smiths, memeing down the fort for us. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going to come back tomorrow. We're going to see what's in store for us. It's not going to be the Trump trial because that's not back until Thursday. But there will be a lot more to attend to. And I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. Aussie Kev says AOC asked good questions for a change. So weird. From our friend Aussie Kev. Thank you for that last one coming in. And my friends, that is it for us on the day. What's up, Angie Warren? Angie Warren also said, Membo for 8 months, had to pop over and wish everyone a hello. Very good to see you, Angie Warren. Thanks for being a Membo for 8 months. And Lady Ice shared with us this person. Okay, so my friends, that is it for us. We will see you right back here tomorrow. So until then, make it a great night. Sleep very well. Have the sweetest of dreams you've ever possibly imagined. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.